will come to order. Welcome to all. Would ask that all in attendance please turn off or silence your electronic devices, and if you'll please stand to honor God and country. Father God, we humbly stand before you, offering you honor and praise for the many blessings you have showered on the city of Temple Terrace. We especially lift praise for the men and women who serve in our Public Works Department during this week that nationally honors them. Thank you for their dedicated work in refuse collection, recycling, sewage, street cleaning, and all of the many aspects of public works. Father, bless them and their families as they have blessed us in contributing to the safety, health, and welfare of all Temple Terrace citizens. We thank you for our freedom to assemble. We ask your hand of blessing on this meeting. Guide and direct us so that wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another reigns. We pray these things in the name above all names. Amen. We will now pledge to the flag of our great nation as we approach our nation's 242nd birthday. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If there are any persons wishing to address council, forms are available in the back of the room and may be turned into the city clerk to my right. If Angie Guy, City Clerk of Dade City and the Florida Association of City Clerks Awards and Scholarship Chair would please approach the podium. And as Ms. Guy approaches, and thank you for being here this evening, during the 2018 Florida Association of City Clerks Summer Conference and Academy held June 10th through the 13th, 2018, our own city clerk, Cheryl Mooney, was awarded as the 2018 Clerk of the Year. Cheryl was recognized as her accomplishments have made a significant contribution in raising the professional status, image, and education of the municipal clerk profession. Ms. Guy is in attendance this evening to present the 2018 Florida City Clerk of the Year Award. Ms. Guy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cheryl knows how I hate to talk in front of people, but for her, I'm going to make an exception. I am joined by Lori Hillman, the clerk from Zephyr Hills, Andrea Calvert, the clerk from the town of St. Leo, and your very own Kristen Garcia. You've already given my name. It is our honor to be here with you tonight and our privilege to present the FACC as we recognize this year's recipient of Clerk of the Year. There are more than 500 municipal clerks serving in cities, towns, and villages throughout Florida, and to be selected as the Clerk of the Year is considered a great honor and position of distinction. This year, we are proud to recognize Cheryl Mooney as the 2018 City Clerk of the Year. Cheryl is a master municipal clerk with over 22 years of experience. She's a member of the International Institute of Municipal Clerks and a member of FACC. She was recently reappointed to serve as the Central West Director of the FACC, which oversees approximately 70 municipalities. Just a little background. I met Cheryl about 3 years ago at a summer conference, my very first conference. And to say that she's become a friend, a mentor, a colleague is an understatement. We've served on and chaired many committees together. I have personally witnessed her and her willingness to offer assistance and training, to provide planning and preparation of materials, to aid clerks in the serving of their municipalities. Her dedication to supporting her fellow clerks as well as her community is incredible. She's an inspiration to us all. We have gained from her experience, ideas, and she is a great inspiration on how to give back through her successful community service activities in your city. For this and a host of other attributes, please join me in congratulating Cheryl Mooney on her selection as the 2018 City Clerk of the Year.
Cheryl knows she knows where to stand for the photo.
If I can very quickly say, on behalf of many citizens of the beautiful city we live in, Ms. Mooney has been such a joy and such a professional to work with. Never have I known anyone who said they needed anything from her that wasn't provided immediately with great joy, and we appreciate her very much.
Okay, now my turn.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. That's very nice of you.
Congratulations, Cheryl. If the following Public Works team members would please approach the podium. Carl Levy, Bert Clanton, Jimmy Williams, Clint Middleton, Armand Overstreet, Alfonso Lewis, Alan Howell, Shemel Edwards, Mike Coley, Kevin Nolan, and Public Works Director Ray LeBlanc. Thank you, gentlemen, for being in attendance this evening and providing us the opportunity to publicly recognize and thank you for the service that you provide us each and every day. Through this proclamation, a proclamation of the City of Temple Terrace, whereas the nation celebrates the week of June 17th as National Garbage Man Week, and whereas, according to the Center for Disease Control, the eradication of many diseases in the Western world is due in large part to the higher public sanitation standards resulting from effective garbage disposal, whereas the men and women employed by the city for refuse collection and hauling in the community make significant contributions to our safety, health, and welfare. And whereas the proper collection and disposal of waste and recyclables is vital to preventing disease, litter, and dump heaps, and whereas the City of Temple Terrace values and celebrates our sanitation drivers, collectors, dumpster haulers, sewage workers, street cleaners, and all others employed in the Public Works Department who serve the residents and local businesses of Temple Terrace. And whereas the city will participate in programs to formally and publicly thank these employees that serve our community. Now, therefore, I, Mel Gerardo, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Temple Terrace, do hereby proclaim the week of June 17th as National Garbage Man Week and encourage all citizens and local businesses to participate in opportunities to thank the men and women in the Public Works Department. I'd ask if Mr. Levy or Mr. LeBlanc would like to make a few words, say a few words.
I'm outnumbered. You know, there's nowhere to start with these guys because there's never an end. Just to give you a snapshot, well, if you're like me, with garbage, it's out of sight, it's in the bag, you're done with it. This city here, we do, right here, we average 2,100 tons a month collectively. Pick it up, take it out of the city. Andy likes math, that's 4,200,000 pounds taken out of the city, okay? There's a lot of countries and poverty areas that struggle because they don't have systems like this. We all know that. The first thing that makes it possible is all you folks. Without the support, without the money, and other things, it's simply not going to happen. You know, this is a career of choice. I have people here from 30 years on down. We stopped counting at 40 years for Carl. One thing about having this service that I came to like a long time ago, Temple Terrace, they nurture the people, the residents, the businesses, they nurture this service culture. that you gotta do good. We can't call anybody else, and it's nice to know who's at the end of your driveway 4 times a week. Not who they work for, who they are. And if something happens, we go out and we fix it right away. So, I mean, we could stay there for hours and talk about this, but we got one way to go every day, that's up. These guys, they don't get rain days, they don't get heat days. A thunderstorm, I could imagine taking my office and going out, sitting in the street. That's what they do. They do a good job at it. So, tonight, I'm gonna make 2 promises to you folks as a team. We're not gonna run out of garbage. And nobody's gonna steal your garbage. We're gonna come get it. We promise you that. And we thank everybody for the continued support. And if we do good, you let us know, which we appreciate. If we do bad, let us know too. It's a difficult career that they choose. I'm gonna leave you folks with an article from 5 years ago. Give a little insight about what happens, but we do our best, and we press every day. Yesterday and today wasn't the best for us for behind-the-scenes reasons. Everything's done. Driveways are empty. People know who we are, and we all appreciate it. I'm gonna hand these guys a couple things. One of them's from myself, and one of them's from me and Mr. Lupton. We joined forces, and a little appreciation. So, we thank you very much.
And don't go anywhere.
Okay. Oh, she's got the paperwork.
That way we'll get them all lined up for you, and it'll be easy for you to make the rest of the presentations.
Perfect.
Unless you want to get them lined up and make the presentations.
Yeah,
pre-vote,
do
that's
that.
the perfect way to do it.
Carl, this is the easiest thing you've done all day. Yeah.
You guys wanna line up?
No, he's my personal bodyguard. What are you talking about?
We changed.
Squeeze it as tight as you can. That's it, squeeze it tight. You're looking good, looking good. Make sure you can see the camera lens. If you can see it, it can see you.
We don't have to hide this time. These guys are too big. All right, you're all in it. Oh, you got behind the shotgun. 1, 2, 3.
Hold your spot.
All right, you do you. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I got one more small item. I'm gonna leave this up to Carl, he's the senior man. I miscounted on these, so you decide where it goes.
Person who sorts their recycling. Oh, boy, what a politician. Okay.
They gotta work early, so we're gonna let them do it.
Yeah.
Well, no, we don't want them to leave. There's one more item queued up, and then at least one comment from council. So we're ready when our technology is ready.
Let's take a moment to think about garbage. That's right, garbage. Now, I know a lot of us may not realize it, but waste management actually has a pretty rich history that often goes unnoticed. Now, let's wind it back for a second to around 1350. The Black Plague in Europe wipes out somewhere in the ballpark of around 25 million people. Around this time, Britain passed a law mandating clean front yards and introduced their first garbage men called rakers. They simply raked up the refuse into a cart. 1388, the English Parliament bans the dumping of waste into ditches and public waterways. Now let's fast forward a couple of centuries. Now the 1700s through the 1900s saw some fresh new ideas like mass burn plants and harvesting dog feces. An idea that quickly lost popularity. In 1757, Ben Franklin starts the very first street cleaning service. In 1760, the Industrial Revolution hits, and coal burning in London jumps to over 3.5 million tons in 1 year. In fact, the sanitation problem escalated so badly that finally, in 1875, Parliament passed the Public Health Act. Moving along into the 20th century, America becomes more civilized. In 1914, horse-drawn carts are replaced with motorized vehicles. Landfills become more popular. During the Roaring '20s, the Garwood Packard, granddaddy of the modern garbage truck, is introduced. In 1934, the Supreme Court bans dumping into the oceans. In 1941, America enters the Second World War, and despite the struggles involved, come out on the other side of it not only victorious, but prosperous in 1945. As a result, we experience economic growth as more plastics are being used, and the amount of waste springboards to 67% in the post-war era. Fast forward to present day, advances in technology have given us a wide array of ways in just how our waste is handled. A fact that results in cleaner neighborhoods and cities. Now I know what you're thinking. How can I show my appreciation? It's simple. Like us on Facebook. Buy a t-shirt. Embed a free badge for your website to show your support. Download a free coloring book. Order a gift card. Call to say thank you. Help them lift it. Join the recycling effort. On June 17th, let them know that they put the extra in extraordinary.
Thank you, guys. See you in the morning.
Thank you, gentlemen. Councilman Pagorlik.
Thank you. You know, we have a lot of departments here in the city, and we get a lot of mixed reactions, but I'm here to tell you tonight and every day that there is nobody in the city that doesn't love you guys. Everybody loves you guys, including me. And as far as people stealing trash, I'm glad you made that promise, because about 12 years ago, my trash got stolen. That was no, it wasn't you, because it was might have been longer than 12 years ago, because I got a call at 3 in the morning from police officers to come out and identify my trash. And I used some expletives to tell them why I wasn't getting out of bed. And they called back about 3 times, and I finally got out of bed. Turns out some couple of kids in the summer, I guess they were bored, decided to get even with the father of one of their other friends who wouldn't let the kid out to hang out with his other friends. So they stole my trash and a couple other people's trash and dumped it on this guy's front lawn. One of them got a pair of broken legs out of the deal from the father who thought somebody was trying to rob the house, and it was just these kids. So I'm glad you made that promise. But you guys are loved by everybody all the time.
Thank you all. If Mr. Langfeld, our Parks and Rec Director, would approach the podium. July has been designated as Parks and Rec Month, and Carl, we would like to recognize you and your team with this proclamation from the City of Temple Terrace. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the City of Temple Terrace. And whereas our Parks and Recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of community and region. And whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic diseases, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas Parks and Recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas the City of Temple Terrace recognizes the benefits derived from the parks and recreational resources, now therefore I, Mel Gerardo, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby proclaim July as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Temple Terrace. Carl, would you like to say a few words and introduce us to the staff you have with us this evening?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, members of City Council, once again, it is an honor to come up here and receive this proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month. I've been doing this for a few years now, and in past years, I've come up and I've talked about our wonderful parks, and I've talked about our facilities, and I've talked about the great programs that we offer and all the children that come to take swim lessons or gymnastics classes or tennis lessons. And as I was thinking about what I was going to do this year, I came to realize that none of those things would happen if it weren't for some of these young people that we have in the audience here tonight. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with some of the best and the brightest young adults that this community has to offer, and seen them go on to be fine, upstanding, and prominent members of this community. Some names that I'm going to read off now got their starts working for the Temple Terrace Parks and Recreation Department, and names that you might recognize. Names like Mike Rowan, former principal of King High School; Arlene Castelli, current principal of King High School; Dave Bullock of Bullock Law Associates; Stephanie Shaughnessy; Bob Boss's wife, Cindy Boss, was a swim team coach many years ago at the family complex. Each year we hire a small army of the youth of this community to come work and run all of these programs. And with me, I've got 6 or 7 of these youngsters who are going to come up and introduce themselves to you. And one day in the future, I hope to read off some of their names as members of this society who have excelled and gone on to do great and wonderful things, who got their start working in Parks and Recreation. So if you guys want to come up one at a time and just kind of introduce yourselves.
And once you come up, stay up, because we'll have you in the photo.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Thomas. I am now attending HCC for the next 2 years, and I am a counselor at the park.
My name is Byron Cooper, and this will be my 3rd year being a junior counselor for the Temple Terrace Rec Center.
Very good.
Hello, my name is Suhaila Mubaslat. I'm a student at USF, double major in criminology and sociology. I'll be done in the summer. I've been working at the Parks and Recreation Center for a year now. I started off as a summer program counselor, and then I worked throughout my senior year as the after school, and now it's summer again.
Hi, I'm James Emsley. I'm going to be a student at Mercer University over next year. I run the tennis program, tennis camp at the rec center, and I'm on a tennis scholarship from Mercer, so I'm looking forward to that.
My name is Lexi. I go to University of South Florida. I am a gymnastics coach. I grew up in the gymnastics program, and I've been coaching for 3 years now.
Very good.
Hello, my name is Justin Craig, and I'm a lifeguard at the pool and the aquatic center, and I'm also a swim instructor. And I've been here for about a year now, and I'm going to be attending the University of South Florida in the fall.
Very good.
Everybody get really close. Hank, there you go.
She's a junior, she'll be attending.
Yes.
You don't stand a chance with some of these guys. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And one more. Perfect.
Hi, guys.
Moving on, there is one vacancy on the Hillsborough River Technical Advisory Council due to the term expiration of Stu Marvin. Stu Marvin is eligible to serve an additional 4-year term and is interested in continuing to serve in this role. I just ask if Mr. Marvin is here this evening? Well, council, I would ask for a motion to approve the reappointment of Stu Marvin to the Hillsborough River Technical Advisory Council for a term extending from June 19, 2018 until June 19, 2022. Is there a motion?
There is. I proudly recommend and move to reappoint Stu Marvin back to the Hillsborough River TAC.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilman Ross. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries unanimously, and Mr. Marvin, if you're watching this evening, we thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. Next, Police Officers Pension Board appointments. The Police Officers Pension Board of Trustees is established in accordance with City Code and made up of 5 members. 2 members are city representatives, 2 members are Temple Terrace police officers, and 1 is a resident elected by the board. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Mayor Mel Jurado and City Manager Charles Stevenson to the Police Officers Pension Board for a term extending until May 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, appointments to the Firefighters Pension Board of Trustees. The Firefighters Pension Board of Trustees is established in accordance with City Code and made up of 5 members. 2 members are city representatives, 2 members are Temple Terrace firefighters, and 1 is a resident elected by the board. I would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Mayor Mel Jurado and City Manager Charles Stevenson as the city's representatives to the Fire Pension Board for a term extending until 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It-
We've also got recommended.
We're doing them individually, sir. Thank you. I would do the city's appointments first, then we'll go to the firefighters, and then we'll go to the citizen. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes, there is. I move
Second.
to
We've got a motion from Councilman Ross, a second from Councilman
He said so
Pagorlik.
moved before, so.
All in favor signify with aye. Oppose the nay sign. And next, would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Fire Chief Ian Kemp as the firefighters representative for a term extending until May 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question, not really discussion. Why is this body have to appoint these, if it's, the city sends 2 people, the fire department sends 2 people, why do we have to approve their picks? I'm confused by why we have to do that.
Well, because ultimately they're appointed by council.
Well, it says in the ordinance that, the city appoints 2 people, the fire union appoints 2 people, and collectively they elect the 5th. So I don't know, why do we have to appoint, I mean, I'm not opposed to doing this, but I don't know why we have to do this at all.
I can, well, I don't know why you do it, but I can tell you that, in the past, I've been on other boards, and they don't do it. So my understanding, when it first happened here, I was somewhat, I didn't understand why, but what I was told is that it's a formality on our part. Because the council, it is voted by the members, so I think it's more of a formality for this happening. It's not, they don't actually put us on the board. But it's what I've been told.
And it allows us to publicly recognize and thank you for your service, Chief, so thank you.
I have a comment on that. And I believe it's also because our charter says that the city council shall appoint all boards and committees that act on behalf of the city. So even though they nominate them, our charter gives us the authority to put them on it. So I believe that's in our charter, that we have the authority to put people on boards and committees.
So we have a motion. Was there a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Chris Damian as the firefighters representative for a term extending until September 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. And finally, would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Jerry Terrace as the resident member through September 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion?
I just have a question. Just because on ours it says 2018.
But when I read the backup information, it said for a 2-year period, so I assume 2 years would be 2020.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I made the correction in my notes. I just,
Okay.
when I read the backup information, it said a 2-year term.
I just wanted to clarify for the people who
Perfect.
might read the agenda.
Perfect. So we have a motion, a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Council, if the minutes of June 5th City Council meeting are acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion around the minutes? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Minutes stand approved. Next, persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. A 3-minute time limit will be imposed on all comments from the public. Individual members of the public who are present in the audience may designate in writing a representative to speak on their behalf, not extending beyond a total 10-minute period. Would ask that as speakers come to the podium, please state your name and your city of residence. And during public comment on items not on the agenda, the city manager and directors who are in attendance this evening do make note of these items. During the city manager's report later in the agenda, Mr. Stevenson may make comment on these items that are brought up, or where further research is necessary, he or staff he assigns will reach back to our residents. We want to ensure all of our residents that your comments are taken seriously and will be followed up on. Jamie Stats.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Just wanted to talk about a couple things with the co-board. I'm actually a member on the co-board. Recently, we've had a few different instances of unprecedented actions that have taken place, and just kind of wanted to bring that to council's attention. One being an example of, we recently had a specific case where the co-board actually made a finding or a recommendation for council, and before the process ever made it to council, the city had gone through and actually settled the case, which I'm not 100% sure, but don't think that's the way the process works. We also had another case in which our recommendation was renegotiated and presented to you all, which was completely different than what we had. It just seems like we've had some stuff happening from the city, that's kind of out of the realm. We've had some issues with certain processes in the meetings being attacked by the attorney, and just think it's something that the council may need to look into and address at some point. Later on, you all are going to hear a resolution about appointing us an attorney for the co-board, which we are supposed to have. In the resolution, it stated that we requested an attorney at every meeting, which we did not. We do not need an attorney sitting on the dais when we're up there at every meeting at all. We just basically have a couple cases, as some of you all know, you've sat on the co-board itself. Periodically, we'll get a case where we got a question here or there. So as for us exchanging services with Tampa, I don't know if that's necessarily a need that we need to have. We more or less just need somebody that if we have a problem, we can call and ask that question. The other problem I have with it is if we're exchanging services, how are we keeping tabs as a city of what hours are spent where, who's going where, and that kind of thing. So it just seems to me that we may have a couple issues that are going on between the board and the attorney. Some of the rhetoric back and forth has gotten a little heated on both sides, but it's definitely frustrating as a board member. I don't speak on behalf of all of them, but in the instances that we've had, it's put us in predicaments where it's backed us in corners, and information's not making it all the way to council as it should be. So I just thought I'd want to bring that up and put it in the minutes so everybody could hear that part. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stats, and thank you for your service. Marcy Lieber.
I'm Marcy Lieber. I live at 6624 Glencoe Drive here in Temple Terrace. And I second the appreciation for Parks and Recreation that do such a wonderful job keeping our city a wonderful place to live. We have so many services, and especially our parks are just such a drawing point for when people come here. Woodmont is especially popular and valuable to our city because we host so many events and a gazillion weddings every year and everything. And the city owns it, but the Temple Terrace Garden Club helps to maintain it. Prior to Brewfest, we had a major cleanup, so we would shine for the many, many people who come in from, I don't remember how many counties, but we had demographic from all over the place. We're getting to be real popular. So we got everything cleaned up, and we were all spiffy, and we looked great, but then it started raining. And we are overrun with what's popularly known as skunk vine. I'm sure everyone is aware of that. If you've ever pulled a piece, smell your hand, you know why they call it skunk vine. So tomorrow morning from 9 to 11 officially, but I'm going out there earlier because I want to beat the heat, we're going to have another major vine pulling event. So many people from the Garden Club will be there, many hands, light work. But if anyone else out there is bored tomorrow morning, we would welcome anyone who would like to come out and continue our Vine Vengeance event. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I've been hearing people talk, everybody knows we've lost a lot of trees on the golf course and around the city. And we've lost some at Woodmont. But I've been hearing people tell me that our trees at Woodmont are showing signs of illness. They're not doing so good. Apparently, I don't know that much about it, but I have some trees in my yard that I think I'm going to get an arborist out to look at. But apparently, there's something that can be done to help these trees. I guess you would have to get a tree company or something to come out and diagnose it and do whatever could be done. But I think that's something the city needs to consider. It doesn't seem to me like it would be that expensive. I don't know whether there's funds set aside to maintain, special funds to maintain the parks. But if that's a possibility to look into, I sure would like to have our trees looked at Woodmont Park. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Lieber. Next, Code Enforcement Attorney and Other Matters, Sean Lloyd.
Good evening, Sean Lloyd, Temple Terrace, member of the Code Enforcement Board. And I'll just, some of the same comments Mr. Stats had, so I won't repeat and delve on those. But one of the concerns I do have is we are before you tonight, which I was surprised how quick it came in front of you, since we just found out about it last Wednesday, was I don't know if we're using a memorandum of use or memorandum of agreement for the services in exchange for the city of Tampa, representing the Code Board. And then subsequently, the City of Temple Terrace attorney would then reciprocate number of hours back to the City of Tampa. That is something that, while is great and sounds like it's free and very cost-effective, there's always a cost involved with that. And my concern is that the process needs to be vetted and some due diligence done on that. How are we going to measure that? How are we going to keep track of that? We don't really need an attorney every meeting. Obviously, we'd like to have one for the first couple meetings to go over some of the issues that we find legally we're having challenges with. But to say that it needs to be every meeting, I don't want to be that board that has the taxpayer saying, what was the Code Enforcement Board in 2018 that's taking the Temple Terrace city attorney away from doing City of Temple Terrace duties at the cost of $60 an hour. So it's not free. It's the services and the time should be at the City of Tampa will be taking away from the City of Temple Terrace. I think that's something that needs to be either every quarterly or every biannually. Reconcile the hours. Where are they being spent? Trade is great. Previous life, I lived and died in the business doing that. But you better believe that all those drink tabs I stapled in a book and added it up to the dollar amount of whatever services someone provided for me. So that's something that I think definitely needs to be done there. The other thing is, and I think we'll get back into it, it's just some inconsistencies. There was a challenge on the lien reduction metrics, albeit in one meeting. However, there was no challenge to the dollar amount that's on the petition form, as the fact that we only charge $45 in attorney fees when we're looking at city costs for a lien reduction. And that's a metrics. But that's not been challenged or vetted yet, whereas another one was in full public view vetted pretty significantly. And then there's been another thing where the code director is presenting our findings to the city council. And sort of like when you first see Mama kiss Santa Claus, you kind of know it's not right, and you don't really know what's there. But the code director is part of the prosecution team when presenting a case to the Code Enforcement Board. And I don't believe we should let the defendants, i.e. the citizens, know that the prosecution is going to be presenting that finding to the council. And in essence, if asked questions, the prosecution does get to speak again, and the defendant might not be here to either validate or rebuff those statements. So I think I don't know how that practice came to be and who authorized that, but I definitely think that's something that we'd want to reevaluate. That's pretty much it. The other inconsistencies we'll discuss with the new attorney and work those out.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Consent agenda, City Manager Stevenson will explain the item listed on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just really just some cleanup. At our goal-setting meeting a few weeks ago, we had discussed reassigning some funds that were originally intended for the goal-setting planning meeting. Typically, what the city has done in the past is contract with a firm in order to do that, in order to mediate that meeting. Last year, the Profitable Group was hired in order to do that. In looking at our options this year, our own mayor kind of pro bonoed the moderation of our goal-setting meeting. Typically, we would account $1,500 for that. Madam Mayor has approached us with looking for some sponsorships and some investments outside of the city in order to sponsor the Youth Leadership Council that she's taken the initiative to get going. Certainly, in our budget process last year, we had not budgeted any money for any type of sponsorship for that. So what's on resolution here this evening, and I think we talked about it, and this is a matter of just cleanup and formality, is to, suggestion is to take that $1,500 that is budgeted in account 1101-512.31-99. It was originally intended for goal-setting moderation fees, and reassign and redesignate that $1,500 into the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council so that it would be payable to basically the council so that we can help support the mayor's program. With that, I'll leave it at that. We recommend approving that.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Are there any persons wishing to address council on the item of the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, if the consent agenda is acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve the item on the consent agenda.
Move to approve a consent agenda, item A.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify with aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement for legal advisor services to Code Enforcement Board. City Attorney Pam Shoshone will explain.
Thank you. As you may already know, the law does prohibit the city attorney from both representing the city code enforcement department and the code enforcement board that presides over the cases being prosecuted. That is considered a conflict of interest. Our city code requires that we provide the board with a legal advisor. And in section 1.68, subsection G, it states that the city attorney shall represent the city and its departments in bringing cases before the MCEB or special magistrates. And it states that the MCEB, Code Enforcement Board, shall have their own attorney who shall be responsible for providing the MCEB with legal counsel. And when it comes to interpreting legal language and cases and laws, the word shall means must. Therefore, pursuant to the city's code, it doesn't seem that there really is any alternative to providing them or not providing them counsel. They are supposed to have counsel. It goes on to say that they don't have to have one at every meeting, but we need to establish something where they at least have a counsel. I've been told that at one time the board did have legal counsel, but that person had retired. And since then, the board has been operating without an attorney. Approximately 2 or 3 meetings ago, and I think it's the meeting that's been referred to by a number of citizens, including Mr. Stats and Mr. Lloyd, the Code Enforcement Board at that meeting requested to have an attorney again. And at that time, I promised them that I would do what I could to make sure that they got one. So this is the result of the efforts to abide by their request. Also, at the last meeting of the Code Enforcement Board, 2 of the Code Enforcement Board members, who are fairly new to the board, expressed a desire to have training with regard to code enforcement, and more particularly, the Sunshine Law. To these ends, the city would like to accept a proposal that was made by the City of Tampa's legal department and enter into this interlocal agreement that has been included in your agenda materials. The agreement provides that the City of Tampa will provide one of their attorneys, and I'm fairly certain that initially they are going to provide the Chief Assistant City Attorney who oversees the code enforcement for Tampa and has also lectured at Stetson College of Law periodically on the topic of code enforcement. In exchange for his legal services, Temple Terrace would be agreeing to provide an attorney, which would be me at this time, to attend Tampa's code enforcement hearings and advise their special magistrate, which was something that I was doing prior to coming to the city of Temple Terrace. My experience in doing that is that although their code enforcement hearings are 2 times a month, they actually conclude a little bit quicker than ours because they only have a magistrate rather than an entire board, so there's much less discussion on every case. The attorney provided by Tampa will be able to conduct the training that has been requested by board members and probably should conduct a training each time that there is a new board, or there is a new member appointed to the board, so that that new person is not operating without any training. This proposed interlocal agreement is only for 1 year, but it can be renewed if both cities desire to do so, and the agreement can be terminated by either party for any reason upon 30 days written notice. So we're not getting into something that we cannot get out of. Be aware that if a decision of the Code Enforcement Board is ever appealed, Tampa's attorney is not going to handle that lawsuit, nor would I do that for Tampa under this agreement. There may be some people who do not think that the board needs an attorney, but it is always better to have one to advise you before an action is taken than afterward when the error has been made. If we could only predict when judicial error is going to be committed, we could do away with our appellate courts. But nobody's got that crystal ball. And if we have an attorney for our Code Enforcement Board that is essentially simply exchanging the same services with us and is costing little to nothing, it would seem better to take advantage of that than not. There was a mention earlier, and I'll just address that at this time, something about a $45 for attorney's fees. That seems to be popping up, but I believe that that is an outdated charge that we had been imposing on somebody who's been found in violation. The $45 for the attorney fee for each case was based on the fact that we were paying an outside counsel to assist in the prosecution of these cases. Since I'm here on salary It is not costing us $45 for each case. I'm here for the same price regardless. And the same thing goes for me going over to Tampa. It's not taking anything away from Temple Terrace. I can always be reached. And again, on salary, as a professional, I am required to fulfill all of my duties, no matter how much time it takes, whether it's weekend, nights, vacation. My responsibility is to always fulfill my duties for the same price. So it would not take anything away from the city of Temple Terrace. But I will tell you, if it becomes onerous to me to drive back and forth from Temple Terrace to Tampa, I will certainly let you know and probably recommend that we request that some adjustment be made in this interlocal agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Shashan. Are there members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Council, any questions?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Ross. I know this is your project.
You have a question?
No, there've been several comments made tonight about, you know, how do we keep track of Mr. Schoen's time and the other attorney's time and things like this. I'm sure this is all written in, or is a way for us to do that. I mean, there shouldn't be, I mean, we're talking about meetings, correct? I mean, there's not going to be other times when you're called into action. This is just attending the meetings to answer questions and to be an advisor, is the way I understand it. Like you said, you're not going to go to court or go to.
Correct.
Right.
All I would do would be to go to Tampa, to the city hall. They have their meetings there in council chambers, just like we do. And I would sit there up at the dais. Actually, I'm a little lower down than their special magistrate. I sit there throughout the hearing if the magistrate has any questions of me with regard to legalities, evidence, procedures. I provide them with my best legal advice. Our Code Enforcement Board would have that same service provided by the Chief Assistant City Attorney for Tampa.
Councilman Boss?
Since it's required for them to have an attorney, I think it's important that we get one, since the gentleman is no longer doing it, is retired. Obviously, there's some discord that's going on. The new people do need training, particularly in sunshine law and everything else, and how we can accommodate that, and they do need someone to seek legal advice from. I don't think it's any different than any of our other local agreements between the police department and fire departments, where we can track how much we're providing to the city of Tampa and how much Tampa or Hillsborough County is providing to us in monthly and quarterly reports. So we can look at it. We can see if it becomes onerous, it becomes a disadvantage to us, then we can go ahead and look at it and review it and make a new decision on it. But it's something we need to do as a board. The concerns of time spent are certainly important. But we have them in our other departments also that have mutual aid agreements and interlocal agreements with Hillsborough County and the fire departments and police departments, and we keep track of them, and we know what's going on. So I don't think it's any more than just another report to us, so we can look at it and say, okay, let's get this straight, and let's get them the legal representation they deserve.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Chilura.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would ask that you consider moving this item later on to council business, because there's multiple issues that I'd like to discuss, this being one of them in reference to the code board with some of the testimony we've been given and some of the things that have been going on there for the last 2 or 3 months.
There's a request to move this to new business.
Not a problem with that.
Very good. We will pick this up under new business later in this evening's agenda. Thank you, Councilman Chilura. Moving on to item 6B, a resolution authorizing Cardno Engineering to provide design services for the rehabilitation of Telecom 1 sanitary sewer lift station. Troy Tinch, Public Works Director of Utilities, will explain. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. As you know, the next 3 agenda items are specifically aimed at the design for the rehabilitation of 3 specific lift stations within the city. And if acceptable, I thought I would present the general design elements associated with those projects in totality. And after that discussion point, then we would move to administratively address each individual resolution as required. If that's acceptable, then I will just discuss the projects in general, and then we'll move to the resolutions themselves.
Very good.
Okay. So the city enlisted the services of two of our consulting engineers under the general consulting services contract that we have, Kimley Horn and Cardno. And we consulted them to come in to do design for the rehabilitation of these three specific lift stations. If you'll note on the aerial map that I included in your packet as well as on the screen, you can see the approximate locations of each of those lift stations. The first is the Telecom 1 lift station, which is located in the northeast, or in the northern part of the city, appropriately within the Telecom Industrial Park. Lift Station A is the sanitary sewer lift station that's located in about geographically the center of the city, right off of Whiteway Avenue and near the water treatment plant. And the final lift station is Treetops, and that lift station is located in the southeastern portion of the city, over near the Harney Canal, near the Hillsborough River. These lift stations are function as simply that. A lift station lifts the wastewater or pumps the wastewater from elevations of low area to those of higher elevation. This allows that the water then, once it reaches that higher elevation, to then gravity flow through our sewer system throughout the city, eventually on out to the city of Tampa where it is treated. We have 30 of these lift stations located throughout the city. These specific lift stations were all built in the mid-'80s, so that puts them at about 30 years of age. The design age for most of these lift stations is around 18 and 20 years. So we're a little bit outside of that box, but they are still functioning, but they are in desperate need of rehabilitation. So we definitely want to move forward with this process. The rehabilitation process will consist of, there's a series of industrial piping and valves at these stations are highly mechanical devices. They lift, again, that wastewater on and up out of our system. So we'll be redoing the pumps, the industrial piping, all of the control valves, as well as the electrical control station. I do want to also note that all three of these lift stations have a generator backup. So in the event that we do lose electricity during a hurricane or a storm, they will automatically switch over to a generator system and continue to function appropriately. One of the other significant elements to these lift stations is the holding well, the containment well, basically a concrete box, rather voluminous in size. As the wastewater comes into that system, it builds up to a certain level, it trips a float switch, then the pumps kick on, and it pumps the material on down the line. So we will again be looking during the design phase for that to update the systems. Some instances, we're actually pulling some of the control valves out of the ground. They're in vaults now. We're finding that to be problematic and that they flood frequently, which leads to issues with gaining access or maintenance of these valves. So when we have to take the systems offline for cleaning and whatnot. So we'll bring this up above ground for ease of maintenance. The projects have all been budgeted for in our FY 17-18 CIP budget. That said, we would like to bring forth Resolution 6B, calling for the rehabilitation design of lift station Telecom 1. Staff recommends council approve the resolution authorizing Cardno Inc. to perform design services for the rehabilitation of Telecom 1 sanitary sewer lift station in the amount not to exceed $95,725.00, which is budgeted in Appropriation Code 430 38995363.33. I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tinch, and I'd first ask if there are any members of the public wishing to comment on this item. Seeing none, I would ask if council members have any questions. Councilman Donahue.
I just have one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
You had me at, it's a budgeted item in the CIP funds. So,
Okay. We'll keep that in
yeah, keep that in mind.
Therefore, if acceptable, would entertain a motion authorizing Cardno Engineering to perform design services for the rehabilitation of the Telecom 1 sanitary sewer lift station in an amount not to exceed $95,725. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, a resolution authorizing Kimley Horn to provide design services for the rehabilitation of Lift Station A sanitary sewer lift station. Troy Tinch will explain.
Again, Madam Mayor, Resolution 6C calls for the rehabilitation design for Lift Station A to be conducted by Kimley Horn. Staff recommends council approve the resolution authorizing Kimley Horn to perform design services for the rehabilitation of sanitary sewer Lift Station A in the amount not to exceed $59,639.84, which is budgeted for in Appropriation Code 430-3899-5363.33. I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tinch. I would ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item. Seeing none, I would ask council if they have any questions on this item. Seeing none, if acceptable, would entertain a motion authorizing Kimley Horn to provide design services for the rehabilitation of Lift Station A sanitary sewer lift station in the amount not to exceed $59,639.84. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, a resolution authorizing Kimley Horn to provide design services for the rehabilitation of the Treetop Sanitary Sewer Lift Station. Troy Tinch.
Again, Madam Mayor, Resolution D calls for the rehabilitation design of the Treetops Lift Station to be conducted by Kimley Horn. Staff recommends council approve the resolution authorizing Kimley Horn to perform design services for the rehabilitation of the Treetop Sanitary Sewer Lift Station in the amount not to exceed $46,671.20, which is budgeted for an Appropriation Code 430-3899-53563.33. I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I would ask council, do you have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, if acceptable, would entertain a motion authorizing Kimley Horn to provide design services for the rehabilitation of the Treetop Sanitary Sewer Lift Station in an amount not to exceed $46,671.20. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There is a
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tinch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Next, a resolution awarding a 3-year contract for audit services. Lynn Boswell, Finance Director, will explain. Ms. Boswell.
Good afternoon, good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. I bring before you a resolution. It is recommended by the staff and the audit committee that the city council adopt a resolution awarding the 3-year contract for audit services to Moore Stevens Lovelace CPAs and advisors. It is $48,000 annually for the next 2 years and $50,000 for the 3rd year. If a single audit is necessary, it will be an additional $2,500. These amounts have been budgeted in the past, and they will be budgeted in the future as well as we have done. The audit committee had met and reviewed all of these proposals, and this one came out on top.
Thank you, Ms. Boswell. I'd ask if there are any members of the public that would like to address council on this item. Seeing none, I would ask council if there are any questions.
I do have a question. The scores are fairly close. was this a comfort level that you had already worked with this company before and you felt like you had reached an understanding of how we work and?
It was more than just a comfort level, to be very honest with you. When they were introducing the principles in part of their proposals, the one that threw the more Stevens Lovelace over the top is the fact that the person has worked in local government before and understands, as sometimes you get these CPAs who've only just worked as CPAs and maybe not in municipalities. And the relationship is they actually bring one of their senior members to work directly with us was definitely a plus.
That's nice to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, if acceptable, would entertain a motion awarding a 3-year contract for audit services to Morris Stevens Lovelace CPAs and advisors for $48,000 annually for fiscal year ending September 30, 2018, $48,000 for fiscal year 2019, $50,000 for fiscal year 2020. If a single audit is necessary, the cost will be an additional $2,500 per year. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, Ms. Boswell. Next, item 6F, a resolution approving a bid award to a third-party EMS billing service. Fire Chief Ian Kemp will explain.
Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, stand before you today asking for your support on contracting with an outside EMS billing company. We've had, over the past 10 years, almost 11 years now that I've been at the fire department, we've continuously increased our call volume, subsequently increased the amount of people we transport. So I guess the question would be, why outside billing? The current workload has increased to the point existing staff is unable to keep up with the demand. Our call volume and transports have increased substantially. In the last 10 years, as I said, we've gone from approximately 2,600 calls a year to 4,600 calls we anticipate having at the end of this calendar year. We have difficulty in maintaining our education requirements for training in order to understand the vast federal and state laws, regulations, and compliance requirements. For those reasons, our collection rates, and others, our collection rates have dropped from an average of 85% to under 45% of billed services. What would an outside billing company provide? They would provide task-driven employees that have job functions throughout the billing process, enabling more efficient billing process. Currently, our employees must know all of those job functions. These people are experts at collecting data and processing. They have state-of-the-art IT infrastructure geared totally towards EMS billing, designed for collection rates. They are fluent and educated in the language of legal considerations, with never-ending Medicare updates, medical transport protocols, HIPAA laws, and other security issues. This company will provide on-site training for our firefighters for patient care reporting and HIPAA compliance. Better reports equal better collections. They will electronically submit all claims to ensure early priority and expedited turnaround. They also have the up-to-date and the newest changes and designs of Medicare, Medicaid, VA, and self-paying. The benefits of outside billing would be the reduction of a half of a 0.5 FTE, resulting in about $15,000 savings, substantial reduced of liability, and obvious reasons estimate we can very quickly increase our revenue stream by 20 to 25%. The cost of this contract would be 6.5%. EMS management and consultants would charge 6.5% of all net collections. Because of this, we went out to bid. We received 2 bids, and one of the bid was awarded to a third-party EMS billing service, which is EMS management and consultants. So staff recommends from the fire department, and after a strong consultation with the finance director, that we recommend City Council adopt the resolution awarding a 3-year contract for EMS services to EMS management and consultants.
Thank you, Chief. I would ask if there are any members of the public that would like to address council on this item. Council members' questions? Councilman Ross.
Well, Chief, this has been a thorny problem for a while, and I thank you for bringing a solution to this to us. This sounds like a very good idea. My only question I have, and you somewhat answered it, but what if any impact, well, it's got to have some impact on existing employees, because somebody's doing this currently that's not going to be doing it. So is this going to have an employment impact on any current employees?
What happened about a month ago, actually probably less than a month ago, the individual that was doing, we had a full-time FTE and a part-time employee. That full-time employee left for lunch and never came back. So quickly, because certainly in this business, time is money. Luckily, the part-time employee, after much convincing, stepped into the full-time position and is doing a phenomenal job. So right now, all we have is that 0.5 FTE that is missing out of the equation, out of the current budget, but that is the position we would be able to cut. And to parallel what you were saying is the reason we need that full-time employee is twofold. There is still going to be some billing issues associated with having an outside billing company, not anywhere close to what we have and the needs are now, but we're going to still need to get some information over electronically, and she knows how to do that, and or will know how to do that. And also, we are in desperate need of more help in the administrative assistant role. Yes, sir.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. For council's benefit, if your numbers are right, or even close, it looks like it's going to cost us about $45,000 for this service, but we'll recoup $140,000 of the $700,000 that we're not recouping now, for a net increase in revenue of about $95,000.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet my job on it, but I think it's going to be substantially higher.
Well, even at those numbers, it's.
Yeah, even at those
yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
we wanted to estimate, but this company and other companies, about a year and a half ago, shortly after I took over from Fire Chief, I knew we had to do something very quick. So we invited companies in, and they basically diagnosed our system and told us how much they believe they can save us. And from there, I talked to the city manager, and he said that this is kind of a no-brainer, run with it. So that's what I did, and that's why we're here today. But there's nobody in Hillsborough County that's doing their own bill. Maybe Plant City, maybe, I don't know. But if I had to guess, 90% of EMS transport, both private and public, are doing doing business outside for their EMS transport. There's just too much. The laws are ever changing. We don't have the time or the money to send people to classes. And the penalties are extremely stiff.
Well, like I said, even just the numbers don't lie, so.
Yeah.
Even let's assume that you're even close.
Yeah.
You're looking at, a net increase in revenue of $95,000 to $100,000. So to me, that makes perfect sense.
And Chief, I'd commend you. It seems like this is a best practice for back office recovery and freeing your team to do what they do best and not be pushing papers. Will there be any adjustment to fee schedule for our residents, or our residents current fee schedule is staying steady, correct?
They won't notice a thing.
Very good, thank you.
They might receive, they'll probably receive return phone calls a little bit quicker, and I think this will streamline everything for not only us in the fire department, but I believe for the patient that's transported.
Very good. Councilman Donahue.
Yes, I'm normally against outsourcing any of our services, but from what you've said tonight, our citizens they're not going to notice. The services obviously are the same, and will actually free up employees to do something else. I was concerned about losing an employee as well. So you've answered all the questions down the line, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion, council? If acceptable, would entertain a motion awarding a 3-year contract for EMS billing systems to EMS Management and Consultants. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, would call the vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, our first public hearing and first reading to approve an ordinance for CPA number 18-02 Beyond Self-Storage. The public hearing is now open. Mark Hudson, Hillsborough Planning Commission, will present. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. Again, Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. I did want to, before I begin my presentation, to convey to the council that Tony LaCola, who is your liaison between Temple Terrace and the Planning Commission, has left us. He's gone on to another position in Alexandria, Virginia, but he did want me to pass on his good wishes to the council and to the city in general. Just in a little way of introduction, I'm a 30-year veteran with the Planning Commission. I've been working behind the scenes for some time on Temple Terrace projects, and I'm looking forward to a more prominent role. Since 2002, I've been the liaison between Plant City and the Planning Commission, and look forward to doing the same for Temple Terrace. With that, I'll go ahead and begin the presentation on this plan amendment. It is TT CPA 1802. And I'm not sure if the PowerPoint has come up or not.
There we go.
There we are. Again, this is Plan Amendment TT CPA 1802. It is located in the northern part of Temple Terrace. Getting used to the technology here. It's a little bit different than what I'm used to in Plant City. As I mentioned, it's in the northern part of Temple Terrace, north of Fowler Avenue, east of North River Hills Drive, and you can see it's west of the Hillsborough River. I think a couple slides have skipped here, but let me just go ahead and reiterate what was on that slide. This is a privately initiated plan amendment. It is one parcel. It is just under 5 acres. The applicant has requested to change that land use from Hillsborough County Residential 6 to Temple Terrace Commercial. It is a result of an annexation. This shows you what is located on the site today, which is a church. And to give you an idea of what is the surrounding area is, in the development pattern of the surrounding area, north of the subject site are single-family detached homes. South of the subject site is some attached single-family homes. To the west is a filling station. And this shows you how the adopted land use map looks today. To the north is Plant City Residential 4. To the east and west is Hillsborough County Residential 6, which allows 6 dwelling units to acre. At the south is Temple Terrace Residential 9. And if this plan amendment was approved, this is how the land use map would change. It would recognize the commercial node there at the Hillsborough River, North River Hills Drive and Fowler Avenue, and expand on the current non-residential activities at that node. It allows up to a 0.5 FAR. This gives you an idea of the potential impacts of the development if it was approved by City Council. Under Hillsborough County Residential 6, it would be allowed for 27 units, or about 50,000 square feet of non-residential uses. That would expand with a more dense and more urban feel of the Temple Terrace Commercial, or 41 units and up to 100,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Staff did share this internally with Temple Terrace staff and their departments, and also externally with other outside groups, and to date we have not received any objections. I did want to go over this slide. Staff did review this for consistency with the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan. We found it consistent with several policies, and the full policies are in your packet, but we felt it is consistent with the policies dealing with city form, with non-residential development, with multimodal corridors and growth management. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission Board on June 11th, and they did find it consistent with the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan and did recommend approval to the Temple Terrace City Council. That was a unanimous vote. And at your second public hearing in a couple weeks, our staff recommendation from the Planning Commission is, after receiving public input, to approve an ordinance adopting TT 1802 and finding it consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to stand for any questions. I will also note that the applicant is here and would like to make a brief presentation as well.
Very good, and at this time, I would call up the applicant to make the presentation.
Madam Mayor, City Council, I'm Jason Margolin with the Ackerman Law Firm on behalf of North Point Development. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again. We agree with the recommendation and respectfully request that you will approve the amendment to the comprehensive plan at the second hearing, and also with respect to the next item, adopt an ordinance on rezoning. Mr. J.J. Jenkins of North Point Development is here, and he planned to discuss the proposed project and the work he's done with the neighbors and to answer any questions. We thought it might make more sense for him to present that after the next item, but he's of course here and ready to address any questions you have at this time as well. Thank you.
Very good. I would ask if there are any members, well, I know there are members of the public that would like to speak on this. First off, we have Jason who has spoken. Paul Diacostino? Oh, okay.
I'm Paul D'Agostino. I'm a citizen of Temple Terrace, and I'm just here to, on behalf of the church, and I ask the council to approve this so that the church can move, and that is important in the church growth. We have not been able to grow because of the size of our physical size of our church and the inability to expand. We have had church property on sale for the last 6 years, and feel that North Point will develop the property in a way that is an asset to the community. And our move is important in fulfilling our mission of developing what we have called the Peace Village, which is a multiple service to the community. So we ask that you look favorably on this request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. J.J. Jenkins.
Good evening. I'm J.J. Jenkins with North Point Development. As Jason mentioned, I'm happy to kind of go into a presentation, kind of talk about the operations and what we have proposed, but that might be more applicable for the next item, or I'd be happy to do it now. I'll kind of leave that up to you.
Well, if it's more applicable to the next item, we'll hold for that, and
Okay.
I'll call
I'm
you up
happy to
again.
answer any questions on this item as well.
Thank you, and at this point, I will turn to council and ask if you have any comments or questions. Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. If the city clerk would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan, future land use map for one parcel of land located at the northeast corner of East Fowler Avenue and River Hills Drive with an addressable location of 7308 East Fowler Avenue, consisting of approximately 4.25 acres, by changing the future land use designation on said property from Residential 6 Hillsborough County to Commercial Temple Terrace for CPA 18-02, providing for amendment of the official future land use map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
If acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve CPA 18-02 on first reading. If approved, the ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on July 3rd, 2018. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, motion carries. Next, continuing a first public hearing and first reading to approve an ordinance RZP 18-02 beyond self-storage. The public hearing is now open. I would ask the city clerk to swear in all persons who will be testifying on this matter.
Can you raise your right hand? You can speak. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
I would then ask city council members, please disclose any oral or written ex parte communications with applicant or citizens regarding this matter.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
My only communication was before the meeting this evening with Mr. DiAgostino.
Community Development Director Amir Nisi will present.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. I have one resident, she has a concern, she wants to speak before my presentation. Dr. Hudson.
We will call on the
Okay.
public. You will have an opportunity, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Sit
you.
right. Let's see, before we start. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. We have before you RZP 1802, rezoning, reclassification for property located at 7308 East Fowler. This is the first public hearing and reading. The owner is First United Church of Tampa LLC. The developer is North Point Development. Some background information, the location, as I stated, is a 7308 East Fowler. The current zoning is commercial neighborhood and residential 6 per acre under Hillsborough County. We will rezone it to planned development with conceptual plan, City of Temple Terrace. The acres is 4.25. Sorry. Looks like doesn't want to cooperate. I'm sorry? Please. As I stated, it's a conceptual plan. We do not have the site plan. We do not have the construction detailed yet. Will be a new building, is a 3-story. The footprint is 29,800 square foot. Is a self-storage, condition storage, climate control, if you will. The number of the parking is 1 ADA accessible or compliant, 5 standard parking. The landscape buffer on the north portion of the property is a 20-foot. On the east portion of the property or east side is going to be 20-foot. On the south side, on the Fowler, is going to be 8-foot. And then on the gas station side, we'll provide additional 5-foot. And as I stated, this is just the preliminary building elevation on northeast from the parking lot, northeast from corner of Fowler and River Hills Drive. And the other 2 elevation on the northwest corner and also on the east, from River Hills Drive. Yeah, it comes and goes off. So we have 6 condition of approval to this rezoning. The first condition of the approval is the phases of the construction. Start this fall of 2008, and then hopefully ends by September of 2019, spring or summer of 2019. It's going to be 3-story. The footprint is 29,800 square foot. is a climate control storage. And the condition number 2 is a site development standard. The maximum FAR or floor area ratio is a 50 or 0.5. The maximum impervious surface area would be 20%, and maximum open space wetland is a 50%. The condition number 3 is the residential landscape buffer. As I stated in the prior slide, would be 20-foot landscape buffer along the north and eastern property line. And on the south side, as I stated, we will have some landscape buffer. On the east side, we will have, and same thing on the west side. Number 3rd condition of approval is a masonry wall, which is 8-foot height on the northern portion of the property for the first 3 residential off of the River Hills Drive. Prior for us to come in here, applicant had a couple of meetings with the HOA and heard the residents' concern, talked to the residents, understand their need, and this wall is part of their compliance, if you will, and satisfy the neighbors' concern for pretty much privacy and also the noise and loading and unloading, or even if the trucks comes on the backside. And again, this is a masonry wall, will be constructed. We do not have the site plan yet. We will show it in the site plan. Would cover the first 3 residential property off of the Fowler. And then the 5th condition would be the coordination for infrastructure improvement. As you know, partially this land is a wetland. We have to comply with the Environmental Protection Commission. We have to work with them. We have to make sure, again, if there is a land delineation, we comply with the requirement request, and applicant is very well aware of this and will work with the EPC on this development, and we will not we will not move forward unless we have the approval from EPC and necessary permits. The hours of operation per our land development code 16.7.10 would be limited from 10 p.m. to 7 p.m. There is no operation for unloading, loading. This is pretty much for loud noises, excessive noise to disturb the residents. And again, we put those conditions in there. As prior presentation by Mr. Hudson from Hillsborough County, this has been reviewed by Planning Commission and has been approved, is consistent with our comprehensive plan. Staff recommend approval of this rezoning. And I'm standing by with any questions.
And we will hold questions until we hear from both the applicant as
Sure.
well as our citizen. At this time, I'll call Mr. J.J. Jenkins to present as the applicant.
I'm happy to present. Do you want to go in this order, or did you want the?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Good evening. I think we've got slides for me as well. Okay. I just wanted to introduce myself and talk a little bit about what we have proposed here. I'll walk through it and then be happy to take any questions you might have. Beyond Self-Storage, thank you, was a brand that we initiated in 2016. We currently have 13 facilities that are now either open or currently under construction. And we're excited for Temple Terrace to possibly be our first project facility here in Florida. When we first identified the property on Fowler Avenue as a potential site, we were informed of some prior attempts to approve the site for redevelopment that had been met with opposition. So I had initially contacted the River Forest Reserve HOA to kind of talk through, get additional information from them on those prior attempts, the issues that, understand the issues that they had and to discuss what we were looking to propose there. In my first discussion with a representative of the HOA, I was filled in on the details of some of those past development attempts that had been proposed, which included a Wawa gas station and a hotel. And the concerns of the neighbors included the noise and the traffic that went along with commercial developments like that. I kind of pointed out some of the positives about our proposed development. Self-storage is one of the lowest traffic generating uses that there is, so that was obviously a direct positive compared to what they'd seen previously. Additionally, unlike most self-storage facilities, you typically think of just kind of rows and rows of garage doors and exterior access. All ours are our facilities are all internal, so there is no external access to units. Everything is done inside the building. If you rent a unit from us, you get a security code. You enter in the security code, you drive your vehicle inside the building, do all your loading and unloading inside, and then when you're done, you exit the facility and exit the property. So we make for a pretty quiet neighbor, actually. We continued to have ongoing dialogue with the HOA, and we ended up having an on-site meeting for any of the residents there that wanted to attend. We used balloons to kind of mark the height of what our proposed building would be on the side at the building corners, try to give a good representation of what they would expect. And we discussed other design concerns that they had. Some of the items that were specifically addressed include, in general, the fact that we would be coming in for a planned development zoning. They were very concerned if going, this had the split zoning going in, commercial and residential. They did have concerns about it being used for commercial purposes other than what we were proposing. Going in with the planned development approval allows us to be site-specific, obviously, and specific to our plan, so that would alleviate concerns for potential other uses besides ours being developed in the future without a rezoning process. With that split zoning, there was a clear demarking line between what had been commercial closer to Fowler and what was residential closer to their backyards. We agreed with them that we would not extend our footprint of the building beyond what that commercial zoning line was in the first place. So on the site plan there. Is there, I'm going back. Gotcha, thank you. You can kind of see the outline of the footprint there, so you can see everything that we kept the footprint is within that initial commercial zoning. So even with the PD in place, we're within where that commercial zoning was in the first place, and it allows us to keep a good portion of the property undeveloped. We agreed to keep the impact on the wetlands area to a minimum, and so what we had talked about initially was not to exceed a total half acre total impact. Our plan, as we have it submitted right now, keeps that impact to actually about 1/3 of an acre, so we're well under what we had told there. The back of our building, which faces north and which directly faces the neighbors adjacent to us, was a concern for those neighbors. What we agreed to there was what they were wanting to see was if we could basically make it a green color to fit in with the tree coverage that would be back there and basically blend in so they wouldn't see it at all. We were open to that. We gave 2 color samples for the residents to look at, both a couple green colors that come in the standard stock for our materials, and they picked one out that they preferred, and so that will be the color on the north side of our building when we submit our plans in, and that's what's shown in the elevation here. It's a classic green, the 2 options that were a fern green and a classic green. So, let's see. We touched in the staff's presentation about the masonry wall. That was an issue. Here you can see where we would put it here, going along the first 3 houses there. We would agree to put that on the property line. and tie it into an existing wall that runs on the west side of the property line there on River Hills. And that's shown on our plan that we've submitted for the city. And as you saw, it was a condition of approval, and we're in agreement with that. Another concern that was raised was the noise from our HVAC units. So we pushed those back from the initial site plan that we had shown the residents that we were going for, or that we had presented initially. Those are now at a minimum of 85 feet away from the nearest property line, so that shouldn't be a concern either. On the conditions of approval, I did just notice tonight when I was reading through there, we're in agreement with everything on there. There was the one box that had the square footage, which was 29,800, which is just the building footprint. So I would ask that maybe just to avoid any unclearness there, that either that references specifically that that's the footprint, or else change that number to be the maximum, since it is a 3-story. It's roughly 3 times that. It works out to be about 92,280 square feet, which the other conditions there with the impervious surface and that cover that, but I just wouldn't want there to be any discrepancy there later on. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go into any more detail on any of that anybody would like, but I wanted to give a brief overview of kind of how we got here and what we're proposing. So.
Thank you very much. I would ask a member of the public that would like to speak to this, if you'll come up and state your name and city of residence.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Sharon Hodson, and I moved to Temple Terrace in 1977, and I never left. I love it here. I've had 3 homes here, and I purchased also a business right across the street. I'm in the doctor's offices next to Greco Middle School. And it was such a pain building here from all the rules that you all have, and I never regretted it one bit. We were well taken care of. The police watch out for us, and my patients love coming to my office. My husband is here too, and we decided to purchase a home over here in the subdivision that's in question here. We live at 7215 River Forest Lane. We are the house that has a little more going on than the other 2 homes. We have both, we are at the end. So when you're coming down, if you're going down Fowler from, let's say, City Hall, and you take a left onto River Hills, when you look to take that left, you're looking at my house through the trees. We're right behind the gas station. But we also have the other gas station. So we have 2 gas stations and 2 major city streets, Fowler and River Hills. We didn't know about this when we bought the house. We weren't told that this was done. But we found out 3 days later by a neighbor that wanted us to make sure that we supported this. So we didn't know about it. We also didn't know that in December that the house had been broken into right over the brick wall, because it's not a very high wall. And so then I thought that maybe we'd get to meet Mr. Jenkins. He did come and talk to one of our neighbors next door, who's a very nice man, but we didn't know it, and we weren't given an opportunity to ask any questions of him. So I'm really glad he's here tonight, so I can get his card, and I know that will happen. But as we look in our backyard, which I was hoping that maybe one day one of you or someone could come look at our backyard, we're the only backyard that's not secured by another neighbor. We have that Fowler brick wall, and then it ends. And there's a gap. And that gap is where it's very interesting for the people that mill around the gas station. Even the people next door to us, who are very nice, had a homeless man living behind their wall for quite a while, because gas stations are what they are. But here is the biggest problem that we have. There's 2 dilemmas here. The first thing that was told to us is that possibly the cement wall, which now we know can be 8 feet, that makes me very happy. But it comes down to the end of River Hills and it stops. And then there's a gap before you get to the brick wall, which is the corner of my home. There's some foliage there now and a tree that's got a pink in it that may be pulled out. And when it does, we don't even know what's going to happen to the ground underneath our home in there, because the tree roots is a huge, beautiful tree. I'm not fighting for the tree. I'm saying we don't know what's going to happen. So all along, I've been thinking that what was originally told me by a neighbor was that the cement wall was going to go down, and it was going to be on the driveway side that exists right now by gravel and everything. And so there would be a gap of foliage between that cement wall and our house. The problem is, they can't close it in. If you take that cement wall down to River Hills, if you bring it up and close it to the brick fence, you've made an unapproachable area with uncontrolled growth. Now, I didn't think of that, but Amir brought that up to me today, and it makes sense what Amir's saying.
Ma'am, your husband's here this evening. Would he like to fill out a form and then give his time to you so you could continue?
Yes, he would.
Okay. I didn't want to cut you off, but you have 3 additional minutes, ma'am.
He doesn't like to talk.
Oh, 1 additional
Right.
minute, I'm sorry.
So then today, when I was talking to Amir, he was saying, well, we're thinking of bringing the cement wall in alignment with the fence you have now. I can keep up my redwood fence, I don't have to look at a cement wall. But there's 2 problems. Number one, we don't know what is going to be destroyed in our backyard because of the digging that has to take place for the cement wall. We'd like to have that looked at. It's very serious for us. We just bought the home, and there's very beautiful, extensive foliage, and that's why we bought the house. And the second concern is that on River Hills right now, when I was on the phone with Mr. Amir, I walked outside and looked. And down there at that corner that I'm talking about, someone had taken rusted rebar, angled it at the ground against our brick wall, and was using it for a step to look over. You can just see what they were doing to see what the property's like. So there's one more piece. We have a brick wall that you all built that makes an L and comes into our backyard. That brick wall, I wanted to propose is that you bring that cement wall into the area where the brick wall is and take the brick wall down, and then use that brick, which is plenty, the big wall, to make the first segment of the brick, make that 8 feet, and the second segment down 7 feet, and then the third will be 6 again.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would ask Mr. Jenkins if you would like to reply at this time, or if you would like to exchange cards and connect with the applicant.
Yeah, I'd be glad to work with them on that, and I'll exchange my card, and I'm sure we can close in a gap there and figure out something that will work for them, so.
Very good. Then at this point, I would ask City Council if, oh, there's one more, okay.
No, I'm fine. I got what I wanted.
Then I would ask City Council if you have any questions of the applicant or our director.
Madam Mayor, Council, I was privileged to talk to Dr. Hudson this morning, about 9:30 in the morning. I spoke with her over the phone about half an hour. I explained in depth to her, this is the conceptual plan we have. We don't have the site plan, but I assure her the wall is going to be butt up to her existing fence. There is no gap. Because part of the presentation, we propose a buffer between the residential and commercial that is required per our land development code, but there is no easement based on our information, based on my knowledge, between her property and the current property. So the proposed masonry wall is going to be tight against the existing fence. There is no gap between there, okay?
No, there is a problem. My fence, when you go up to the fence.
Okay, we can't get into the debate at this point.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask council, are there any questions, comments? Councilman Ross, and then we'll go this way. Oh, Councilman Donahue.
All of the questions that I had, Mr. Anisi or Mr. Jenkins, were about lighting and trees. I didn't see anything, though, about lighting. Is there, did I miss it?
No, yeah, I'd be glad to address, lighting, we keep very minimal. We have lighting on the front, the lighting off the back will be just as required by code for minimum security reasons. And everything would be downward facing and designed so that it wouldn't escape the boundaries of the property.
Okay. It seemed like all my questions that I had, once I read your meeting notes, were addressed. So
Okay.
about trees and wetlands and all the things. It sounds like you've really gone out of your way to make sure the neighbors. I really do like the fact that this is not the final plan, so that there's more that we could do if it became obvious to the neighbors that it wasn't working. I wish I could have been there to see those balloons. It sounds like an interesting way to show that. I did have one question, though. There was something in the presentation that said the hours, I think it was backwards. It said it was from 10 to 7. It's really 7 to 10.
What that was referring to is the hours that it can't be operated between 10 PM and 7 AM.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And then one other thing I would point out as well was just security is a big factor for us. A facility will have somewhere between 25 and 30 security cameras inside and out. We're monitoring everything that's coming into the property, what's going on around the property. So that was something else I didn't touch on earlier, but it was discussed with the neighbors that they do have issues with folks either going through the site now or maybe camping out there, and once we come in, that will go away because we'll have cameras on them. We do not want people on our property, obviously. We want anyone coming onto our property as a customer to feel secure. We don't want anything like that. So that'll be a primary concern of our management staff as well to address that. So our interests will definitely be aligned with the neighbors in that respect.
Thank you. Councilman Ross.
I had a question. I'm not sure, you might have answered it and I didn't catch it, but I just want to clarify. The wall that's going up, the 8-foot wall, goes behind the first 3 residences east of River Hills. My question is, there's 7 residences, why not all the way? I think I heard you say that then it meets with an existing wall, is that what you?
So where it meets with the existing wall would be on the far west side with the existing wall that the doctor was just talking about. Going east, the reason it's 3 lots, we met with the 4 lots that are immediately adjacent there that would have the most view of our property. The 4th resident felt comfortable after we showed them the balloons and where the building would be back in the trees and that kind of thing, that they didn't want a wall in blocking. They wanted to be able to see out into the trees afterwards. Okay. So we stopped it at the 3rd. Once you get beyond that, our development wouldn't be able to be seen through the trees, so that's just where we had stopped.
Okay, so the location where the wall stops, that decision was made in collaboration with the neighbors?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? The public hearing will be closed at this point.
Thank you.
If the city clerk would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 4.25 acres of property located at the northeast corner of East Fowler Avenue and River Hills Drive with the address of 7308 East Fowler Avenue from zoning classification residential RCS 6 and commercial neighborhood CN, Hillsborough County, to Plan Development PD Temple Terrace for RZP 18-02, providing for amendment to the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
If acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve RZP 18-02 on first reading. If approved, the ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on July 3rd, 2018. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just one thing, hopefully between the first reading and the second reading, maybe we can get some resolution to the concerns that were voiced tonight to put some of this to rest, maybe at the second hearing.
Sounds like it.
Thank you.
But I can't, I'm not here.
All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, motion carries. Next, item I, a public hearing and second reading of ordinance 1455 to amend Chapter 8, Building and Fire Prevention Code. Public hearing is now open. Fire Chief Ian Kemp will give a brief explanation.
Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, this is the second reading of what I brought up 2 weeks ago in regards to Chapter 8, changes to the Fire Prevention Code. This code is twofold. One of the things it does is I think it helps small business owners, existing and future, with understanding the codes much better. It also aligns us closer to what the county and Tampa require for building and subsequent changes to existing buildings, but it does not affect the fire safety of those individuals that are working and are living within those buildings.
Thank you, Chief. Are there members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Council members, questions?
No, I think we asked them all with the last.
Seeing none, would ask the city clerk to read the title of ordinance 1455.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Chapter 8, Article 3, Fire Prevention Code of the City of Temple Terrace, Code of Ordinances as follows. Section 8-54 entitled Purpose, short title. Section 8-55 entitled Administration. Section 8-56 entitled Standards. Section 8-57 entitled Fire Safety, and Section 8-58 entitled Hazardous Materials, providing a severability clause, effective date, authority to codify, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1455, amending Chapter 8, Building and Fire Prevention Code. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Next, we move to council business. We have one outstanding item. I would entertain a motion to authorize our city attorney to negotiate a settlement of file number 15-CP-1498. Is there a motion?
I move to approve to direct the city attorney to enter into negotiation for a settlement to file number 15-CP-1498.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. We will now move to new business, and the first item in new business is a presentation by Hart concerning service changes. Hart Interim CEO Jeff Seward is presenting Hart service changes affecting the city of Temple Terrace. City Manager Stevenson? Oh, okay. Mr. Seward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. Stevenson. I'm here tonight, as I promised back at an April meeting where I stood before you, of a commitment that Hart has towards its charter members, which you obviously are. At that meeting in April, I had talked to you about my recommendation to go before the Hart Board and recommend reinstatement of what was at one time Route 57, which was a vital route through Temple Terrace, transporting upwards of 200,000 people. We have since gone before the Hart Board, recommending the change, recommending the re-implementation of that route. We have had public outreach, and I am happy to report that on July 1st, Route 48 will become active through Temple Terrace. For the detail of that route, I brought with me the person that actually knows about the route, our Chief Operating Officer, Ruthie Reyes-Burkhardt. Also, I've had the opportunity to meet with the city manager, and I have made a continued commitment outside of just Route 48, which isn't just, the public response has been overwhelmingly positive for that reinstatement. But to take a real hard look at our infrastructure that is within the city limits of Temple Terrace. So we're within the process right now of actually taking pictures of every bus stop in Temple Terrace. We're assessing the condition of all of those bus stops. We are going to prioritize the revitalization, the repainting, the restructuring, repair necessary to bring everything up to par and up to standards for Temple Terrace. And again, I wanted to reiterate my commitment for ensuring that as a charter member of Hart, that you will receive the service that your taxpayers are paying for. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Ms. Burkhardt to talk about exactly what the differences are between the original Route 57 and the new 48. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I'm a little shorter than Jeff. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Ruthie Reyes-Burkhardt with Hart. If you'll put up the PowerPoint. So just a little bit of a refresher where we were back in October. We underwent as an agency an overhaul of our entire system, which included the Route 57. Prior to October of 2017, we lacked high-frequency connections, limited transfer locations, limited connectivity frequently in some of our major activity centers, and some competing and duplicated services. So under that, we took a stab at revitalizing our network from soup to nuts, if you will, from looking at all of our routes to looking at the locations to looking at common destinations, trip generators, where folks were telling us they were looking for service, and some places where we weren't working as productively. As part of that, we were able to increase up to 18% with routes with 15 or more frequency. 89% of the routes now will have 30 or minutes or more frequency, and 89% of all routes will have daily service. Prior to that, there were a number of routes that did not have weekend service or at least Sunday service or very limited version. So you spoke, we listened, we did a lot of outreach as part of the communication that we put out with our customers. We went to public libraries, we went to some community centers. We came back out to Temple Terrace after much feedback received, including thank you, Councilwoman Donahue, for coming and letting us know about some of your constituents, that they were really interested in us bringing back the 57, even if it was in some moderated format. That said, the current service in Temple Terrace includes 3 local routes. The Route 6, which as of February now runs every 15 minutes from 5 a.m. to 12:15 a.m., which is excellent service. On weekends, it's every 30 minutes. You still have the Route 33 at every 30 minutes, and the Route 39, which runs as early as 4:30 in the morning, is every 30 minutes. So you have pretty good frequencies within the area. As part of the Route 48, we received comments that the Route 57 not being in the system created a lot of difficulty for some of our customers to get into the network or to even travel from point to point within Temple Terrace. So part of that discussion led our planners to address that and build this Route 48. And so the Route 48, here's what it looks like. This starts on July 1. Effective hours, 5:30 in the morning up until 10 p.m. And of course, touching into from the university area to Temple Terrace, and it'll stop and end at the Net Park Transfer Center. When it hits up at University Area Transit Center, it connects, it is part of 10 routes that connect in that area along with the Bull Runner that serves USF. And when you reach at the bottom end of the route at Net Park, there's 6 other routes that take you east and west across the county. So this is a great position to be in as far as a resident of Temple Terrace who's looking to reach out into other areas of the county, or for other areas of the county, get back to Temple Terrace. Projected to have about 150,000 rides per year, so we're hoping to be super successful. As part of some of the new services that start on July 1, the new Route 275LX will be implemented on July 1. Again, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. It does come all the way from Wiregrass and Wesley Chapel, which is now reaching another hospital zone up there, coming into this area, down Bruceby Downs, into the University Transit Center, connecting with all of these routes, including the Route 48, and then heading down as a direct route to downtown Tampa. Also a connection for some of your constituents in this area to be able to get on the 275 direct to downtown from the university area and then over to the airport. This is a $2 ride to the airport from all the way to Wesley Chapel and back, all day long, hour-long frequency. So this is a huge improvement for our system. Part of this also had us to do a little bit of editing of some of the routes. We had the Route 51X, which only provided 2 trips in the AM and PM, is part in why we introduced the Route 275LX. We used some of the funding that we received from FDOT to be able to create a route that runs all day long with hourly frequency. And then there's the Hyperlink program. That was a pilot program, and it also ends July 31st. While it was becoming somewhat successful, the funding in the background for that program were not able to be carried over into another contract. So you still have, though, the Route 6, as we stated previously, 33, 39, and of course, the new Route 48. And of course, there are the connections that you can make along the Metro Rapid Corridor, which is Nebraska, with the Route 1 on Florida, the University Area Connector, the 42, and which takes 45, which takes you over to Yukon and gets you over to West Shore. So these are your local investments at work, improving the frequencies on some of those routes. And a little bit of map about the area. And thank you for listening. Any questions? Sorry, I speak super fast. I'm from New York.
No worries at all. I would first ask if there are any members of the public wishing to comment on the Hart presentation. Seeing none, I would open it up to council. Any questions? Councilman Boss.
I've said from the beginning of my term here, I'm not a fan of Hart, not a fan of public transportation, not a fan of public transportation in New York either, where I came from. Seen it, done it. Not a big fan of it. Think it's underserved us for years and years and years here in the city. I'm glad to see that we're gonna get some stuff done in our bus stops, which seriously need it, and that we're getting routes back that we need. Again, new route here going up to Pasco. Does Pasco contribute any money towards the Hart service?
No, but it is being funded by the Florida Department of Transportation. Just as for the remainder of this year, the new Route 48 is being paid for entirely by Florida Department of Transportation grants.
And that's kind of the same thing with the Tico Street line, which is paying for the free rides on that with Department of Transportation grants, if I recall the article correctly. So they'll be free for the next 3 years, I think, if I remember the article correctly, or 2 years.
I'm currently working on exactly what that will look like, but yes, that is, the plan is to have free fares for the next 3 years.
So people from Pasco now who don't contribute anything except for the FDOT grant are gonna get a ride down to the airport wherever they want for $2. And
Yes.
taxpayers in Temple Terrace who pay aren't gonna get any benefit out of that except for possibly to take a bus to the airport, which I don't know anyone would lug their luggage and golf cart clubs and everything else on to a bus to get down to the airport. But I guess if you want to get back from there, it seems like a good idea. That's all. I'm glad to see that there's at least listen to the residents here in Temple Terrace. I'm glad to see that some of the people who had concerns about their routes, that they're being revisited and looked at. I'm glad to see that we're looking at our infrastructure here, and that, I can ride by every day and see some of the stuff that needs to be fixed and worked on or whatever. I know a lot of it that we paid for initially when it was put in along 56th Street with some of the different looks for our attempted downtown redevelopment. So I'm glad to see those things. I appreciate you coming back and talking to us and listening to our residents, who some may feel they need it. Obviously, we probably had a lot more of you using the hyperlink ride, and that's just another sacrifice of DOT money going to somewhere else where someone can spend it. So hopefully we can bring that back with another grant in the future to accommodate some of our citizens who were using that more frequently than the bus services.
We're looking at different types of options to pull people in to the primary grid with the future Uptowner, which is a circulator that will run around the USF and the hospital area that will connect to the 48. But I had mentioned to the city manager that over the next year or so, we will be looking at different types of options to get your residents connected to our service, and we will continue that dialogue and not disengage again.
And again, thank you for taking the time as a board and as an agency for listening to our residents who had, as Councilmember Donahue stated, had significant concerns about some of the services that were eliminated for them, and hopefully they'll get the message that these services are being reinstated for them.
Any other questions or comments from council? Very good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for being here, Mr. Seward. Oh,
I just wanted to say it's been an eye-opener to sit on the Hart Board, because just as you mentioned, funding is the issue, and everybody wants transportation to be provided, but, it's who wants to pay for it, right? So I thank you very much for paying attention to our bus stops and the lack of attention that had been paid by stops that were no longer bus stops and obviously were just hangout spots, whatever. But reinstating the bus stops on the new route has happened quickly. I know that as of today, I think there were 2 more installed. And I know that our citizens have been calling and saying, when's my bus stop coming? And the answers have been coming very quickly from staff. And I just want to publicly say thank you to the staff who've been so quick to respond. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilman Chilura.
Thank you. Mr. Seward, thank you very much for taking the time to come tonight and thoroughly explain what you're doing. I just have two comments. A couple of months back, I think, when you were here, the city manager and others had mentioned a very dangerous bus stop in front of McDonald's past Fowler. I saw, just a few weeks ago, it's very bad, so hopefully you guys are addressing that. The other idea I have, and I just wanted to express it to you, it's very frustrating when you're behind a big bus in rush hour traffic. And I get it, transportation, mass transit. Has there been, since FDOT has taken an aggressive initiative with funding some of these routes, has there been any thought in some of the newer communities and designs where there's like a pull-off lane when you stop? Because certain places on 56th Street, you can't do that. But once you pass Whiteway, the right-of-way medians are pretty wide. Has there been any thoughts given to that? And even on Fowler Avenue, because when those big buses stop, on a weekend, there's not much traffic, but during the week, 5 o'clock or rush hour traffic, it backs traffic up quite a bit. So just a thought. I don't know, you guys have probably thought about it and dealt with it, but.
And as a matter of fact, FDOT is funding a study along the Fowler corridor, Fowler, Florida, our current Metro Rapid BRT routes. And they are looking at doing a lot of work along the right-of-ways. And we are doing a study to see how we could have dedicated lane pull-offs throughout that corridor, all the way into downtown Tampa. So we are going out for a solicitation in the next 60 days to be able to do that study. So cooperating with FDOT with their funding, we are looking at alternate ways to get the buses either a dedicated lane or use of the shoulder or use of the median with those pull-outs to alleviate that congestion that you spoke of. So we are actively working with them on particularly in this corridor area, in this area.
And my own suggestion is I would ask that you seriously look at least a segment of 56th Street where it's realistic. I understand where there's no right-of-way, you can't do that. But from Whiteway up to Fowler, that's a very intense, right in front of City Hall, actually. That's a very intense pathway there during rush hour traffic. And if there was and there's a few folks that get on and off the bus, and not just one, sometimes it could be 3 or 4 during rush hour. And that I think would really help traffic quite a bit. So just a thought. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seward. Thank you for being here this evening. Next item, Councilman had requested that we move item 6A, resolution approving an interlocal agreement for legal advisor services and code enforcement to this point in the meeting. I will turn it over to Mr. Chilura.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is, much larger than just this one topic of discussion. I have heard from folks in our community, I've heard from folks on the code board that the code board right now has a major dysfunction. And anybody that thinks that's not true, I invite you to look at the meetings from the last 2 months. I was asked to look at that, and especially the one I looked at was the one from 2 months ago. They have a meeting a month, and it was a disaster. The code board members were arguing with the attorney, and it was just a mess. And I know a couple of these board members up here have served on the code enforcement board. I served 5 years on there, and I've never, ever seen a board of this city function in that manner. I think there's some major rehabbing to take place. You've had a couple of board members get up this evening and express some concerns and frustration. There is inconsistencies. And I would ask that, hindsight, everybody's perfect, obviously, but when something of a significant change is going to be brought forth, that there be a little more discussion before it's put on the agenda. When these cases are presented, in the past, even when Mr. Ross was on there as the chairman would present the case to the council, not the Director of Code Enforcement, and he does a great job, but I think it's just more appropriate for the body, the representation of the body to present the case, not somebody from the city side. They can represent the city side, but the recommendation of the board should be coming from that chairperson. There was discussion that, and years ago, there was a major disappointment on the board, and there was like 2 members that just resigned. They just said, we're out of here, we're done, this is not right. And we don't want that to happen, because these people are doing this on a volunteer basis. There's talks, and, there's, the code board recommends something, and when it gets to us, it was recommended in a different manner. The city, I've served on this council for a long time, and anytime a negotiated rate in particular, or fine, is going to be done, it's normally by the code board, makes a recommendation to this council, and this council blesses it and says, move forward. But apparently, if it's, from what I've heard, that's not been the case, at least in one particular matter. There was a fine on the table, and, and out of the hands of code board, out of the hands of this council, that was negotiated. That's not the path we've done in the past. And overall, when at least I served on the code board, the city attorney would have a little orientation with new members, or once every couple of years. This is the way we do it. We didn't have to have an attorney there. There just wasn't a need for it at the time. And if there is a need, I think it needs to be in a manner where we need to see what is comfortable for the folks on the board. Those are the people that are in the trench. How would you like to see it? 2 of them spoke tonight, said they don't like to see it the way it's being presented tonight. So I'm just trying to, I don't have the answer. I'm just observing from what I'm seeing, and there's a problem. And I think it certainly is requesting all of our attention to come together and try to massage it and make it a little smoother. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, I'm just saying that this is not the way this board has run in the past. And any of you that have any questions on it, I invite you to look at the meeting, at least the one from 2 months ago. I sat there and looked at it, I couldn't believe it was on TV. I mean, it was a circus act. So, and it was embarrassing. So I would suggest that I'm not in favor of what's being presented tonight. I think there needs to be more dialogue and discussion to take place. If sometimes if something works, you don't fix it. And certainly if you are going to do it, there needs to be more input from the folks, from the soldiers that are in the middle of the battle. And that's all I'm trying to, so I mentioned a few things tonight. I don't know how my colleagues up here feel about it, but I just think that, at least from one council person, that we need to look at this closely together and try to, smooth things out a little bit, because it's getting elevated, and we don't need that to happen.
And Councilman Chalura, I would absolutely agree completely with the issues you're sharing, and I don't know if it was your recommendation, but perhaps if this council would consider postponing to time certain, perhaps July 17, would give us an opportunity to sit with those who are currently on the code board, hear their concerns, hear their preferences, and I think we've heard several of their preferences around who should be reporting back to this council, code director or chair of the board, and I think we've heard from them. They would prefer it to be the chair of the board. Some of those things on keeping tabs and measurement and tracking and the lien reduction matrix and who's making the recommendation, and that recommendation not being shifted or changed once it leaves that board. So if this council is amenable, I would absolutely entertain a motion to postpone to time certain, and I'm hopeful that perhaps that date of July 17 would give the appropriate amount of time for us to visit with, sit in on their next meeting, and be able to hear from all of those who are currently serving on the code board. But I will, Councilman Boss.
I have no comment regarding that, actually. Just a comment on the history of presenting at things. If I recall correctly, when Joe Gross was here and code enforcement director, sitting in at the meetings, he was the one who presented the case to council. And then after he left, it kind of changed to the code enforcement chairman would present it. So there's been both in the past, and I don't care which way we do it. If the board's more comfortable with having them, but just as a part of history, I think Joe used to present the cases when he was here. And usually there'd be a representative of the code board that was here. So we've kind of done it both ways after he left, and the board chairman went to presenting the cases. But I think we do have to move forward on it as quickly as possible, because if we're required to have an attorney for them, we need to figure out how to get an attorney for them to represent them in their best interest so that they're not punished by anything that goes on and make a misinformed decision. Now, most of the cases that are coming before them, as they aptly said, don't require someone to be there for them. And obviously, ones that do require something that's going to cause a problem can be postponed to a date when we come to go ahead and get them the proper representation that they need and deserve pursuant to our charter and what the codes say. So we need to do that. We need to make sure that's there. How we do it, obviously, that's up in the air, and we can certainly spend 2 weeks to, 2 or 3 weeks to figure out how to do it the right way and get it done. But they're right, we need to not have conflict in such an important board in our city and between, city staff and everybody else. Everything needs to work smoothly and applicably, but we have to provide it at some point. How we do it is the best thing, but this is part of history. I think things have gone in flux in the past. Sometimes the code director presented, sometimes the chairman presented, so whatever we can figure out works best for them works best.
Thank you, Councilman Boss. Councilman Donahue.
Coming into this meeting, I thought we were doing what we've been asked to do. But after hearing the comments, I totally agree that we should not be rushing into this. It sounds like there are a lot more issues that need to be addressed. At the last meeting and hearing from the members, it sounded like they just needed a different attorney. But tonight, it's completely different. But, and I agree, I don't know who said it, but absolutely, if the protocol is that it goes to the code board and then it comes to us for the final agreement, there should never be a step in the middle. I mean, if that has to happen, it has to happen in a way that someone explains why what they've done is legal, not legal, what have you. If you're reading the newspapers, you've just recently read that a case was lost because of comments that were made by a legal board such as us. So there are times when, I know there have been a couple of conversations we've had, I've looked to both attorneys who are sitting there and expecting to get the look that says, don't go there. And I've tried to make sure that's something that I pay attention to. So I'm all in favor, and I would expect you to make that motion, and I would second that motion but I'm not sure that we have the wording correct. Are we postponing? Are we tabling? I know there's a difference between the two. So we just have to make sure we do this so that it happens again.
Based on the comments of Councilman Boss and based on the sense of urgency that we want to be clean in how we do business, my thought would be it's postponed to a time definite.
Absolutely.
And again, July 3rd is a very short window and may not give us the opportunity to get with all of the code board members and hear their, but the very next meeting would be July 17. And I think that would be appropriate and allow us to be very timely in responding, but not reacting knee-jerk, really being able to respond and hear the hearts of our code board members so that they feel comfortable. We can get attorneys in place. We don't want to lose code board members as we're doing it. We want a code board that feels affirmed and respected and part of the process. So my thought would be that time definite. Councilman Pogorlik, I apologize. I
That's
have my
okay.
back to you.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I was actually there when the two people walked out many years ago, and that wasn't pretty, and I certainly don't want to see that again. I've always said that our volunteers for the city is the lifeblood of our city. It's what makes Temple Terrace great. Two things are certain for me. One is Code Board needs an attorney. The other one is Code Board needs to have some sort of meeting with everybody there to talk about you know, all the issues that come up and how we handle them, and being, you know, consistent in their findings, and, you know, Florida sunshine laws and all that good stuff. That hasn't happened in a while, and it should. How we go about doing it, I think, is up for discussion. I personally didn't have a problem with them, you know, trading services. I would agree with the comments that for the 6 years I was chairman, we didn't need an attorney there every time. I think we saw our attorney twice in 6 years, or 3 times in 6 years, and it was all about the Holland case. So, you know, I'm okay with that, but at the same time, if we decide to go this route and it's not costing us anything, I don't see any problem with that particular attorney being there every meeting. So we can talk about it. I'm happy. I want to listen. Like Frank said, they're in the trenches. They're the one doing it. So I'm happy to listen to them. But at the end of the day, they need an attorney, and they need some sort of workshop so that everybody gets on the same page. You know, how we do it, that's certainly up to the current code members in this council. So I'm happy to give them the time we can discuss it and talk about alternatives, but at the end of the day, they got to have an attorney, and I think everybody agrees with that. How we do it, I'm flexible.
Is there a motion?
My motion would be that, based on the discussion that we've had, that some consideration and discussion be given to the way the code board, some of the procedures and policies that the code board is utilizing, and let's make it so let's look at it so it can be more consistent and effective. And that's very broad, obviously, but sort of encompasses the discussion that we've had. It would be helpful, I think, at least, if there was some sort of discussion with, I don't sit on the code board. I mean, Mr. Ross is our liaison. Maybe Mr. Ross and the code board members. I mean, instead of hashing it out here for 2 hours, that there may be some kind of meeting with the code board members, Mr. Ross, the city manager, the attorney, you know, if the mayor, if that's appropriate for it to be put together, to sort of think everybody has sensed the discussion tonight. You know, try to massage it some if there's a level ground somewhere, and then bring it to us where this is what everybody can live with. So we're not sitting here trying to, because I'd like to have the feedback from the folks on the code board. You know, this is how we're thinking. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And, you know, Mr. Ross has been on there. Our city manager's involved with it. You know, I'd like to see, in order to vote on something comfortably, I need to see what works for them. Because I don't go there. I don't know what works, what doesn't work. I knew it worked, you know, many years ago, but I don't know what will work today. So I just like to get feedback from the folks that are out there. So bring this back at a time specific on June 17th. July 17th. But in the interim, have a meeting or two. I'll leave it at the discretion of the folks that are handling it. Our liaison, Mr. Ross, and if the mayor's involved in it, Mr. Stevenson, and particular members of the code board.
And I would ask our liaison, Councilman Ross, do you feel comfortable facilitating that meeting between now and July 17th to get everyone on the same page and feeling comfortable?
Well, I will try, but I've had these meetings. And I'm, thus far, at least for a couple of the code board members, met with unsuccessful. And I'm struggling somewhat to understand the basis for I mean, I fully agree that they need their own attorney. They've needed their own attorney for some time now. And shame on us for not having an attorney in place long before now. But we've come to an opportunity of getting them a better arrangement than we've ever had before. If they don't need the attorney and he sits there and plays, you know, Candy Crush on his phone during the meetings, what difference does it make to them? We've got an attorney sitting there for free. And the only thing we have to do in exchange for that is to allow Pam to go down to the city of Tampa and do the same thing for their people. The basis for the complaint is, what, we don't want an attorney, we're being overrepresented? I don't get it. I don't see the real basis for the complaint is that Pam knows this attorney and they hate Pam. And they,
Point of
I don't,
order.
okay, I apologize. But, so I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to talk, but I have talked and talked and talked, and I'm happy to continue in my role. That's what you're asking me to do. I just don't know what I can say that I haven't said individually to everybody. And I can't speak for other people, but I would caution to say that this isn't representative of all the code board members, because I've talked to them all. And I don't know. And I'm not opposed to another course of action if there's something better. It doesn't have to be this way if we want to. But the only other solution that I can see is for us to go pay somebody. And we're going to pay somebody, and they're not going to be there every meeting. So we're going to, A, pay and get less services instead of having somebody there all the time and not paying. So I can't understand the logic, but I'm happy to talk to everybody and come back to you again at a later. I think I'm out of town some in July, but I'm happy to. I talk to these people frequently. I go to the code board meetings. You're right, that meeting was terrible. It was as bad as you described it. I absolutely agree. But I also went the other night to the code board meeting this last week, and it was great. It was well-run. The acting chairman did a wonderful job. All the members were engaged. They asked relevant questions. I mean, I don't perceive this as being, I guess I don't understand the root of the problem here. I understand that there was a meeting where everybody's danders got up a little bit between the city attorney and some of the board members, but that happened some time ago, and I thought that we had put that behind us, but we haven't apparently. And I've met with the city attorney and the city manager and code compliance director about that meeting. We've not had a replication of that. We've not had any, I mean, that was a bad meeting, granted. No, everybody knows that that was a bad meeting, but I don't know what purpose it serves to just keep going back and just, we're just going to keep bringing this meeting up over and over and over and over again. We've addressed it. It hasn't happened again.
I believe what we're looking for is perhaps a reset on how the group can function and function well together. And to have two members here this evening saying, and again, it might be discussion, it might be part of the process of how we present at meetings, and Councilman Boss brought us the history, and it might be, yep, once we talk about it, we're happy with our code director, or it might be, boy, we really feel strongly we want to be the ones presenting. It might be really looking at processes and policies going forward, but I think it's getting that group together and respectfully hearing what are the things that we might want to, and I believe absolutely, Councilman Ross, that you've done that, but again, getting everyone on the same page where folks can feel that the process is clear. And I know part of the presentation tonight was that training on sunshine and other things that always help us and get on our lane and remain in our lane and be clean. But I'm looking to this body for some motion on how we're going to proceed with this item. And I don't know that we have a clear motion yet on how to proceed.
Well,
Councilman Pagorlik.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll be out of town on July 17th, by the way. I leave on the 7th, so I can probably get with everybody before I leave town, but I won't be here on the 17th to be able to report back to you, so.
You report to the city manager, and he can.
I can do that.
I mean, I watched that tape, and it was as bad as everybody said, but I'm kind of lost myself here. I mean, on the surface, I don't really see the problem with the arrangement presented with the trading of services. I mean, the guy, by all accounts, is a really good code attorney. I don't think, from a professional standpoint, that the relationship, or either real or perceived, between our attorney and their attorney would ever get in the way of a reasonable decision or a reasonable advisement made by him. But they're the ones that have to deal with, they're the ones that have to use them. So if there is a real or perceived problem, maybe we just need to hash it out. And maybe we end up going that way anyway, but we need to hash it out. And if they've got some alternatives, like we have to pay for an attorney that we use twice a year, and maybe, that's not a lot of money anyway. I'm happy to listen. I don't see a problem with the trading of services. I don't see a problem with the individual that is being suggested. I will say that I know from past history and being chairman of the code board that having the workshop to me is much more important than, whether or not we like the particular attorney, because you're not going to use them. Okay, you're going to use them 2 or 3 times, and that's it. And if you get them for free, like Andy said, and he's sitting here doing nothing, and you're still getting them for free, and he's a good attorney, and he's going to step up when necessary, he's going to step up when you ask him, that's all you can ask for. So I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to volunteer your time to sit down with him again, and you're happy to do it. So, at the end of the day, though, I think some of this stuff would get hashed out and go away during that particular training, where they talk about sunshine, they talk about protocol, and I Bob's right. We used to have Joe Gross present it, and then when I was chairman, I presented it. And so, but if that's the way they want to do it, I'm happy to have them do it that way because it works. And they are as close to the problem as anybody can possibly be. So, I don't know that we can put a motion together that adequately addresses all these particular nuances that we heard about tonight. But I think Mr. Chalora got as close as you possibly can get. And I think what really needs to happen is we have these discussions. Maybe the code board comes up with, okay, we absolutely positively don't want this trading of services, okay? We absolutely positively want to be able to have our chair or co-chairman or the co-chair or the vice chair, whatever the title is these days, those two only present their case. And we absolutely positively have to have a workshop by August 10th.
Okay,
If that's the 3 things they come up with, then we're fine.
And so at this point, Councilman Chalura, we have all talked about the issues, so we need a motion.
I would like to make the motion that we schedule a time certain meeting for discussion by this body, recommendations, suggestions, ideas, disagreements, whatever it may be, between the code board, staff, whoever, to bring before us. And, I'm not saying I particularly have a problem with this issue, but, just an example. We're saying who's going to make the presentation, is the director or the chairperson? Well, in the last case, when the board made a recommendation and the director came and made a different recommendation to his body, that would clearly resolve that issue. And I would love to see, when the time comes, a playbook, like we talked about before, rules, policies, and procedures to some degree that the code board is going to follow. So there's no free-for-all every time there's a new wave of members that come on there, something that's taking place. But going back to my motion, I'd like to make it a time certain for July 17th, and I would suggest that it be the code board members, staff of code enforcement, city manager, city attorney, the liaison, Mr. Ross, and Mr. Ross said he's been down this road before, and it's frustrating. I would also suggest that the mayor be on the meeting as maybe a facilitator of some sort to try to, move these things along. So if there's a stalemate, say, okay, well, you see this way, you see, I think, and those are all pretty level-headed people, and I think you guys can move it along. And if they can agree on 5 or 10 issues, fantastic. If there's an issue that can't be agreed upon, then it comes to us, and that's one of the things we discuss.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a reminder that I'm not going to be here July 17th, so somebody else is going to have to do it.
Should
Well,
we?
the suggestion is, well, we could do August. My suggestion
Sure
is,
he's here.
my suggestion is that the meetings with the code board take place when you are here. And then whatever your viewpoint is, it can be communicated, whether it's through the mayor or through the city manager, and as long as you agree, these are my suggestions or recommendations. So I don't want your voice to be left out. I mean, I want it included, or we move it to August. I don't care. I'm not,
Yeah, he can't vote until August 7th. I'd move it to August 7th,
We-
just because he
Okay,
can't be here to vote.
Are you amending your motion to August 7th?
If that's, if everybody's raising their hands, so what is the, what's?
Here's the
excitement?
thing. Tampa was planning on making its vote and presenting this in front of its council at the end of this month. They need an attorney. They have been without one since I left. I don't know that this offer from them is going to remain open all the way until August, simply because they already recognize that they want somebody there advising their magistrate all the time. I understand that there are issues with regard to who's presenting or who's not presenting, but those are procedures of the board and have nothing to do with the item that was on the agenda tonight, which is simply an interlocal agreement having to do with an attorney, which is required by the code here. The attorney doesn't have to be there all the time, and it doesn't even have to be the person I mentioned. They've got lots of people in their legal department, and they have other code enforcement attorneys there. If they don't like the particular person that I happen to know, I don't know the rest of them. They're all strangers to me. So I can certainly make sure that Mr. Mueller isn't the one who comes, although he is probably the most qualified. But if they don't want him, Tampa can send somebody else. And then that issue is taken care of if that's really the issue. But I'm still hoping that we can separate maybe a change in procedures that they want from the fact that we've got an interlocal agreement on the table already, and to decide that today so that we don't leave Tampa in the lurch. I just don't know that the offer's going to be open all the way to August.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Mr. Schoen, but here's my frustration. I should have heard about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and not the night, 3 days before the meeting. This is pretty significant. And I'm not saying I disagree with this concept, but I don't want to be pressured to put my back up against the wall saying, oh, Tampa's waiting, we got to go. Because this should, if this was, in fact, was the route we were going to take, you know, no, throughout my tenures, I would have been notified by our city manager a month ago and said, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? This is what, you know, to all the other council members. So I don't want to sit here and feel like I'm threatened now to say, we're going to make a decision. Well, we're going to take it easy. We're going to massage this a little bit, see what's best, an overall approach. Oh, you got to hurry up and make a decision because Tampa's waiting. Well, you know what? Things happen, and I'm not opposed to working with them if that's the outcome. I don't have a bone one way or the other, but I want to make sure we look at this thing as an overall approach and not just make a decision here and then go back and make a decision there. I just don't want to go there. And, you know, shame on you or whoever else is involved for not bringing this to us sooner than 3 or 4 days ago. That's the point I'm trying to make. And, you know, I want to be fair and I want to talk about it, but don't throw in my face that we got to make a decision. Tampa's waiting. I don't know if the deal will be there, you know, at the next meeting or a month from now. I'm not going to, that doesn't sit well with me. I don't like to be threatened
No,
by.
I didn't mean to threaten you. I was just trying to inform you of
I
what
get it.
their
I
schedule
understand.
was.
And we should
So-
have known about this approach maybe a month or two ago. And then obviously it could have been totally different this evening. So
really-
I'm just asking that, we have a meeting and my motion was, it's time, we'll push it to August if that makes
That's
everybody
okay. You
feel
can leave
better.
it on the July.
We'll make it July 17th. There's a problem, we can extend it at that point. And the meeting be put together by members of the code board, city attorney, city manager, staff from code board, our liaison, Mr. Ross, our mayor, Mayor Gerardo, and then you guys massage it, discuss it, bring it back to us, and give us the feedback or the outcome. And if you feel you need more time at the 17th, ask for more time.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Boss.
It's one thing, I'm fine with extending it a little bit. Obviously, I recognize the problems the city attorney brought up, and I do think Councilmember Ross did bring up this as a solution at the last meeting as a possible way to go. When we were discussing it at the end, that this was something that had been going on behind the scenes, that they weren't willing to move forward with too quickly because they wanted to make sure Tampa was on board with it. So we did kind of have some advanced knowledge, but I'm fine with waiting to the 17th to get everything hashed out so we run our boards in the city in the most efficient manner as possible and put the best face forward to our citizens as we're running meetings.
Councilman Donahue.
I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I would like to see, when it comes back to us, that it's 2 items. One is recommendations for changes that the board would like to see, and the other is this specific interlocal agreement.
Councilman Pagorlik.
I hate to do this, but I might be throwing some complexity into this all a little bit. Is there a way for you to, I don't know, give them what they need in the interim until the 17th, and then we vote one way or the other, so that they're not in the lurch? Are they looking for something more long-term?
I mean, they were basically looking for something no longer than 1 year. So that's what so that's as long as they were looking for
Well, I
at
mean,
this time.
if they're in the lurch and they need somebody to take for some magistrate meeting is coming up, is there a way, Charles and Pam, that we can allow that to happen and give them, Pam services?
Can we talk about this separately? This is not
Sure,
part of the
yes,
motion
yes,
that is
absolutely,
before
sure,
us. We have a
absolutely.
motion, we have a second. Is there any other relevant discussion to the motion that is on the floor?
Yes, ma'am, I just want to make sure I understand with clarity what the expectation, this is for us to meet with them prior to the 17th? Okay, and then come back on the 17th. I won't be here, but somebody else can report my opinions. Okay.
We have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, motion carries. And City Manager Stevenson, if Jeannie will reach out so that we can get that coordinated meeting scheduled to meet with Mr. Ross's expectations prior to him leaving town. There is one additional item of new business. Attorney Shashan has reached out to each of us, has provided us recommended referendum language. The bit of input that I have received has been more is less, keep it clean, do 2 items on the referendum due to voter fatigue. That is my feedback, but again, we are under the gun with time, and so I want to open it up for council discussion and see if there is a specific motion or direction to provide our city attorney so that she can put the referendum language to bed on our charter review. Council.
You're saying 2 items?
What I have heard
Right.
from the citizens I've spoken to is keep it clean, don't have 4, don't have 5, keep 2 items.
Okay, so the 2 items would be?
The 2 items.
One.
One is the cleanup language and the things that we legally have to do, and the second item would be, does the mayor get a vote? If the mayor doesn't get a vote, all the other things that go with it are mute.
Correct.
Well, the second item is the change in the whole form of government, not does the mayor get a vote.
When I responded to Ms. Shoshone, I agreed with the alternative language on the one about, I believe the way it was put on, would be put on the ballot would be that this would allow council to clean up the charter as it saw fit over the years as items either became set by the legislature or whatever. So I think that's cleaning it up, making it understandable. And in looking at cleaning that up, in looking at the next one, my concern is that we are not saying enough. And I know that we have a limit on how many words we can use, so we need some real wordsmithing going on here so that we don't get too wordy. But I want to make sure that if people not only understand, because don't we have another issue about, unless it falls into the first one. The first one includes all of those changes, like how long a person has to wait before they run, and that's all part of that first one. Is that correct?
Actually, that was the second one. The first one had to do with the composition of city council and the mayor being able to vote.
Okay.
I've smithed and smithed. I cannot condense these down to 2 questions. Something's going to have to either be
Right.
eliminated entirely and go on to some other ballot in the future, but I was hoping for 4, but to get it down to 3, we're already eliminating the deciding budget items by resolution as opposed to ordinance. That's the one that's already going to have to go. That would have been number 4. I cannot make these any shorter. I can't make them any bigger. 75 words is it, and I can only squeeze so much into that number of words and have it still make sense. So, the question number 2 had to do with mayor and council members, upon serving 2 consecutive terms, will not be permitted to hold their same office again for 2 years. And also it included that interim vacancies will be filled by council during a properly noticed council meeting using written but no longer secret ballots. So we were fixing that as well in number 2. Number 1 would be granting council the authority to make all the little insignificant changes by resolution, so that we don't have to keep putting it on the ballot every single time we find something.
May I ask another question?
Councilman Boss?
So my question is, if number 1, and I realize number 1 is about the mayor having the vote, which, okay. And number 2 is the cleanup, and number 3 is about the requirements for seeking office and for filling vacancies. So where would we put on the ballot that a person who is in a voting position but changed to a different position would not have to wait out the 1 election cycle? Because right now, our rules are that if I want to run for council again and I fulfill my term, I just wait out 1 election cycle and then I can run again. But the way the new rules are being written, if the mayor's position finishes the 8-year term and wants to run for then a council position, there's no time, there's no separation. I really strongly believe, and I realize that we can say this, we can have education pieces, we can do, as much educating as possible, but if it's not on the ballot, it is not clear to the voter. And so somehow, I'd like to know where that should go. It seems to me like it should go in one of 2, either the one that gives the mayor the vote, which is an item all by itself, really.
Right.
And, because that changes our complexion. Then the second one that actually talks about election cycles and things like that, wouldn't it fit? And I don't mean fit as in 75 words, but wouldn't that be the correct place to put that?
And essentially it is, because the rules are the same for both mayor and council member. And what it says in the proposed charter amendment number question 2 is that that mayor and council members, upon serving 2 consecutive terms, will not be permitted to hold their same office, and the committee specifically put in the same office again for 2 years. So they still have to sit out according to that, but they can run for a different office. So it does say that.
It does say that, but we all know that once you have everyone having a vote, it changes the complexity of the position. I'm just concerned about it not being on the ballot. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, I'm not going to talk against it. I'm just saying I want to make sure that it's clear to the voter that we have changed this. We have changed. This is a big change to go from sitting in this seat and having to wait out an election cycle and sitting in that seat and not. So,
What I've presented are simply the questions. What you may be talking about is an actual amendment itself to the charter. I've been dealing only with the amendments that were recommended by the committee. If they didn't want to put in that language, they didn't recommend that it be in there. So maybe you and I can look at the charter itself and see if for some reason you think there's something in there that shouldn't be in there, or something that we need to add. But my question was based solely on what the committee recommended the changes be, and in 68 words, I did it on this one, but,
oh, you have some wiggle room.
I know, I do. I can put in a few thes, but I think that it does state that mayor and council members, each of them can only serve 2 consecutive terms. That's it, for the position they're in. Because it says they will not be permitted to hold their same office again for 2 years. So they've got to sit out for 2 years to hold that same office. You can't run for mayor again after you've got 2 consecutive terms. You can't run for regular council member again after you've served 2 consecutive terms, but you can switch. So in one sentence, I said it in one sentence, but I'm not sure what more I can add in there that will not be making a different amendment than what I've been given by the committee.
And I didn't mean to open up an entire can of worms. It was a request that we give Pam some guidance tonight. I don't know if we need to do a workshop ahead of a council meeting, but this needs to, we need to finish this language. We need to make decisions and move forward. This can't languish another month.
Perhaps maybe we can separate them out, and if I can ask for you all to maybe take a vote on the alternative amendment number 1. Either the choice was, as the committee first suggested, and now I've sent this to them as well, and I don't know if Mr. Chisler was.
He was here. He
Chisler
left.
was here? Okay. You know, I'd gotten some feedback, and they seemed to see the sense in giving authority to council to make typographical, grammatical, eliminate illegalities from now going forward if the voters allow you to do so. And to do it that way, by adding a section onto the charter, rather than having a question on the ballot this time saying, should we fix these particular grammatical errors and this particular illegality, in which case we will have to do that probably every single election cycle or whenever the charter's reviewed again, and it could be 10 years, it could be next year. So it will save a lot of time, and we'll never have to do that question again, so we'll have room for other questions. And Cheryl had reminded me, is last time that charter amendments were on the ballot, there were 12 separate questions, and each question dealt with a separate section of the charter. This time, as you see, I'm combining them together as best as I can. So if perhaps you can vote on whether to allow me to do a question based on adding that section to the charter rather than simply doing it piecemeal and making those little corrections every time.
Do you need a motion?
We just need some direction. I don't know that we need a motion. We just need some direction.
I can
I
hear a
think for the
consensus.
corrections.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, I'm in
We've
favor.
got to get an ordinance before council. We've got to get actually the first reading, second reading, 2 hearings for council. So we need to get busy with this. We're running short of time. And I would just say I'm in favor of that. I would also say to get rid of the Fourth Amendment regarding having the budget by ordinance or resolution. It doesn't need to be on there at this time. We've been doing it this way for 30-plus years that I know of, at least, or 28-plus years that I know of. And that doesn't need to be on here at this time, but at least the three need to be on here. You probably can't get cluttered down to two, but the three can be on there, and that's fine. That one doesn't need, there's no urgency for that to happen. So I'm fine with it if you want to come up with alternate language for the
Councilman Ross.
ordinances.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman.
I'm in favor of both the proposals that have just been mentioned versus the first language cleanup, giving us the authority to do that. And the second one, as Mr. Boss said about the ordinance versus just eliminate that at the time. So I'm in favor of both those things.
Is consensus fine for you, Pam, or would you like an
Yes,
official?
that
vote?
would be fine.
I've seen heads nodding across the dais. Very good.
Because you're still going to be presented with the actual ordinance, hopefully at the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you. And again, there was that request, so wanted to bring that up this evening. Is there any other new business to come before council?
I just have questions about the meeting set. It seems like tonight we were all looking at calendars, and some of us were still reserving the 19th, or, no, that's tonight, the 26th. Are we meeting July 3rd at, what time did we decide on, please?
We decided on July 3rd at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, and at 4 p.m.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was 2 o'clock as well. So it's 4 o'clock?
time. This is just a preliminary introductory budget meeting.
I've got 3:30, which means 4 o'clock, because I've got to leave.
Because you have to leave.
Yeah.
Okay, so
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
July 3rd.
just a
July
couple
3rd?
hours would do us. good.
July 3rd, 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you. And with that taken care of, we'll turn it over to Mr. Stevenson for the city manager's
Yeah,
report.
and we're not meeting on the 26th.
Thank you.
And there still exists a slim possibility that I will be in trial, and if that particular slim possibility prevails, I will not be here.
Madam Mayor, if I got, do I have the floor?
I warned you.
Just a couple things here, just to give everybody just a little update, and while we're talking about code enforcement, and one of the contentious cases that kind of precipitated some of these issues is 104 Mission Hills. I think originally we were looking at a $70,000 lien, which you would have never collected. The lien was reduced to $5,000 here, I believe, in the last meeting. It's $5,000, the lien has been paid, and a building permit is waiting to be issued. So you're going to end up with something that is a lot more workable than what we originally started with. So that being said, I don't know that all the information that's been provided tonight is accurate. I don't know that you've gotten all the information, but we have taken note of the meeting that you're requesting we do, and we'll schedule that meeting. Just to give you a little update here, we've got 3 proposals that are still sitting on the table from 3 individuals to develop either half of parcel B or the whole entire 4 acres of parcel B. We are putting those together. Hopefully, we can do a CRA meeting. We've got a CRA meeting scheduled on our regular calendar for July 17th. I would like to present those on the 17th. We have directed, and I apologize, you're not going to be here. We have directed those 3 individuals to start putting together some site plans, along with some elevations so that they can present those to council. And we can present those and have you guys decide whether or not you want to move forward with those projects. The rest of the redevelopment, just to kind of give you an update here, we have had to kind of extend the expansion period for Paragon. Mrs. Schoen just had a conversation this afternoon with them. I think I made mention to each of you that we had a problem with their title. We couldn't get clear title because of the way that the property was platted last year versus the way that we had intended to sell them. There's an anomaly within the plat that I can't tell you how it got there, but we're trying to get all that worked out, okay? We have had conversation with them. They are, as the buyer, supposed to provide us a survey with that, and we're waiting on that, and that's been a couple weeks since we've had that conversation. Richmond's contract with Richmond Group has been reviewed by your city attorney, your city manager. It has been reviewed by an outside attorney, as suggested a couple of meetings ago, a real estate attorney. We have delivered that back to them as of yesterday afternoon, and we'll continue to negotiate that contract. They continue to be very interested in getting that contract back from us, so I'm assuming that's showing a lot of interest in moving this thing forward. So that's just kind of a brief status update, if you would, on the redevelopment. We do have a lot of things happening down there, and we're trying to stay on top of each of them. The only other thing I've got is I'd like to call Mr. Tinch and Vinny, if you would come up. I think we made mention to you previously, in a previous meeting, that we hired a city attorney, and I'll let Troy introduce. We've got a new city attorney, city engineer, I'm sorry.
You have a new job?
We don't need another city attorney.
He's like, I don't want to be an attorney.
I'm very pleased to announce that we have brought on board a new city attorney, Vincenzo,
I'm an engineer.
or engineer, one of the two. We'll go with that. It's been a long night. Yeah.
Making this guy very nervous.
There we go. Vincenzo Carrazza, or Vinny as he goes by, comes to us by way of FDOT. We're very happy to have him on board in the 3 weeks or 2.5 that he's been here. Rolled up his sleeves, got right to it, and very pleased with his efforts to date, and looking forward to continuing to work with Vinny. Vinny, if you'd like to say anything?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. As Director Tin said, that I come to Temple Terrace by the way of the Florida Department of Transportation. But before that, my main career has been in municipal engineering. I've done a lot with small towns, from 8,000 people to big cities like Los Angeles. So I look forward to being part of Temple Terrace and looking to serve this amazing city since 1925.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Stevenson?
Yes, ma'am, thank you very much.
Is there any other business to come before this board? Councilman Chalura, and then I'll go to Councilman Gorlick.
I just have a quick question on what Mr. Stevenson had stated, just so we're all on the same page. There seems to be some sort of defect or whatnot with the commercial portion of the redevelopment property. And obviously, the closing is not going to take place until that gets corrected. So aside from that, their time would have expired, so we have so much time to correct it. They've already paid their deposit money, which was, how much was that they paid?
They have made their first initial deposit, 50 grand, I think.
Okay. Or just
I don't know exact amount, but they were to do that second deposit after the inspection period. This is where we found this snafu in the
Okay.
system. So they have not made that. We have been delivered and are working with filling in the blanks on an extension agreement, if you would. And I don't know that I've got the details to give you, but process-wise, I think we're okay. We just need to kind of get this thing going again. They discovered it again, Mr. Chiller, when they did the title search. I had no idea it was there. So,
But normally within the confines of the contract, it gives us so much time to correct the problem that's arisen, whether it's 120 days or whatever the contract speaks to. So I want to make sure we hopefully can get it corrected within that timeline, because they're still bound by the contract. If, you know, what kind of timeline are we looking at to correct this problem?
They are in fact outside the timeline. That's the purpose of this agreement, to kind of do just a legal document that would give everybody the ability to work all this out. I don't know, again, that we've decided on a number of days, but certainly we'll try to get this thing going as quick as possible. We're not looking to allow him to delay this project.
again, we've been working on this thing for 20 years. I think probably a couple of months is not unreasonable to kind of get this problem worked out. We certainly can't convey title with a cloud on it. We certainly can't do that, but I don't know that it's insurmountable problem that's going to cause any problems. We just need a little bit more time in order to get this fixed.
So you're thinking 60 days is what you're guessing?
I would think
right
60 days. Again, we've had some conversation. I had a conversation with Jared about a month ago, just kind of when all this was brought up to my attention. I don't know that any more than 60 days would be needed, but we'll certainly let council know again what we're doing with this. And again, it's nothing that we can't fix. I just need some time to fix it.
So in essence, they're out of contract right now? What I'm trying to get at is most basic real estate contracts have from A to Z. If there's a title defect, then the seller has 60 days or 180 days to correct it. But it still keeps the buyer locked in. Do we not have that clause? I just want to make sure there's obligation on their part. Obviously, they're interested, they're still here. I'm just seeing if our contract speaks to that. Are we just out of contract and hoping that they'll agree to this addendum amendment or whatever you're talking about?
What happened is it expired, and it wasn't that we own the property. It wasn't necessarily a defect in the title. It was a mistake in the legal description. The legal description, for some reason, carved out something that shows up on the plat as a right-of-way. And when they went out there with their surveyor, and he surveyed it, he realized there was a section missing. So we needed to get the legal description for the right-of-way in order to put that into an amendment. And what they have provided us with is a document that's called reinstatement and amendment. So they have proposed themselves a reinstatement of the original agreement as it stands, but with the amendment including that portion, because that was the intent all along, to sell them that portion. So we're this close to working it out. It's a very short amendment, and it includes one section with regard to their submission of a development agreement. I think we finally figured out what we wanted in the development agreement, because there was they didn't know what we wanted. We're telling them, give us what you usually give people, but we wanted to narrow that down, make it easy, and so we've worked out that portion of it. And I think what they've proposed is that once we give them a list of what we want in the development agreement, which I told them today and tried to make it very clear, I left them a message too on the phone, that they have 30 days after that to get us what we're asking for. We're asking for something so basic that I don't think it's going to take them 30 days to get it to us. I think the only thing is that it's going to have to get on the agenda now is probably, to be on the safe side, a vacation of that right-of-way. Essentially, legally, the right-of-way doesn't even exist. You don't have a right-of-way over your own property. We own the fee simple, so there should be no right-of-way. But they have that in their proposed reinstatement. If it will make them comfortable, there's no reason why that, and I'm not promising them a vacation of a right-of-way, because we can't legally do that. I can't do that. But it will come before you to consider vacating this right-of-way.
That doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist.
So there's two
But at
issues.
least it'll be clean, and the title company should have no problem ever going forward.
So there's two issues, from what I understood, unless I misunderstood you. One is the accidentally platted right-of-way that you guys are working on, which should be top priority, hopefully, so we can, move on with the contract. And the second is the little things, the fine-tuning of the development agreement.
Correct.
Okay? So, but I would like, I know you're working on it, but the platted part is more important, because as soon as you get that platted part done, then you get the rest of your money.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the development agreement's not contingent on that second draw.
No.
It's just So the platted part, I'd like to see that done like ASAP, and you guys can work on your development agreement. You got a little breathing room with that, because as soon as that right-of-way platting problem gets corrected, they have to give you the rest of that money.
Then,
which
then
is-
they're, that's it, everything that fits in with their inspection period has to be complete, and that would go in with their inspection period.
I just don't want to tie the two together. Get the platted stuff done and go, no, you guys know that, but once we have more cash in hand, obviously, there's more skin in the game.
Correct. I mean, the development agreement is something that's within our power to say that we waive or not.
Correct. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Pagarla.
Thank you. It seems to be my night to complicate things, but some time ago, and I think Mr. Boss may be the only council member here when it happened, was we voted and made a motion, and the motion was approved, that any CRA discussions, redevelopment discussions, et cetera, would only be done with a full council, full CRA body. Since that time, I think everybody up here has benefited from that, and that we've moved meetings around for myself, for Ms. Donahue, and others. And I would move that the August, or whatever CRA, or July 17th, is it? CRA meeting that's originally scheduled be moved until we have a full body of everybody that's not on vacation. Everybody's not on vacation, everybody's here.
I'm in agreement with that. What's your suggestion?
Right, I just
When are
moved,
you
I just
back?
made a motion.
Made a motion,
Oh,
so
I'll second that motion, but I.
there's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion around it?
My only suggestion to that is that there be some discretion given to that. So if there's a consensus that, you know, if there's contention where two people look at this way and two people look that way, that's where I think we came up with this. And a tie was broken, things got complicated. But if it's a pretty simple issue to move things along and say, you know, if we're gonna pick on Mr. Ross right now, he's not here for the 17th meeting, okay? And he's in agreement, say, okay, yeah, this is my choice. If it's not going that way, maybe we postpone it till he's here, but if it's going and what his wishes are, that he can relate to the city manager, nobody else, then we have the meeting, so we can move things along, because that's all I'm trying to say.
And I don't have a disagreement with that, but I don't know how we can determine that ahead of time.
Mr. Ross spoke with Mr. Stevenson and said, there's A, B, and C choice. I'm in favor of A, and the council's going with the A direction, then obviously
That's fine.
I'm just trying to move things
No,
along.
I get it.
I want to keep everybody involved. We all, I totally 200% agree with you, with your comments. But if it's not a intense, heated issue where it's divided and everybody's online and let's move this thing
No,
along.
no, I'm all in favor of that.
Just a little discretion,
Yeah.
but if there's contention and please, by all means, I want everybody's input. I think it's very important.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Ross.
Councilman
Make a
Ross.
comment on that since it's about me. I did not even know about that motion. I don't mind you having, I mean, the show has to go on. I don't mind you having a meeting without me, but I'm not gonna announce my preference for projects until I hear the presentation. So I'm not gonna tell him before I leave town, I like that one before the proposals have even been presented. I'm not gonna feel comfortable doing that.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I mean, have it without me.
Is there any other discussion?
After we vote on this, are we going?
Well, if he doesn't mind, if he doesn't mind us meeting on the 17th without him, I think he should be there. I think everybody should be there, but if he's gonna,
Oh, I just don't want to hold up the progress of the city just because of my family vacation, but
we've done it before. So, but if he's okay with it, then I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. Motion is withdrawn. Is there any other further business to come before this council? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Yay.